Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I am Brendan, and he is Brandon of the Hawks Nest, and we have gathered together again to talk about the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks, where participating in the biggest trade deadline day in NFL history is beneath us, I guess.
we we're happy with what we got, Brendan. We're fine. We're good.
Which is actually maybe the right thing to do, very possibly. But
Very possible.
yeah, we've got another win in the back pocket. Took out a good team. I think the whole country starting to really take notice of what's going on here in the Pacific Northwest. We've got a pretty good team. It can do some things really well, and we're going to be there for a little while here. But we're going to break all that down. We're going to break down some of the stuff that happened, or maybe in our case, did not happen at the deadline. And we're going to have a lot to say about where the team is headed. So, as I am twice a week, I am joined by Brandon of the Hawks Nest. How you doing today, Brandon?
I'm great. All the more better I get to talk Seahawks shop with you, brother.
Right, right. So we got a game here to talk about that was pretty sweet, but let's lead off the show with talking a little bit about the trade deadline because it was today, and I believe statistically, in terms of the number of trades, it was the most prolific trade deadline in the history of the NFL.
Oh,
There were a
Jesus.
lot of deals. I remember there were like five that came in after 1 o'clock, literally beating the buzzer. So, a lot of action, and the Seahawks did not get involved. So, let's briefly talk about first why that may be.
I think first off the case, I think though there was technically a lot of action, there wasn't the type of action you normally get in a trade deadline, which would have been the teams in sell mode, looking to offload multiple assets. They're done, they're out. This has been pushed, I think, Brendan, by the 17th game season. You added the extra game season. You did not push the deadline back any further when you did that. This has created a situation where there are more teams now caught in a conundrum where they have to call the ball, so to speak, a little bit early if they're going to go full on into sell mode. And so teams haven't arrived there this year. They didn't arrive there last year. They instead, if they're caught on that line, seem to err on the side of maybe we can ratchet this down. Maybe we can do more there. And let me elaborate on what I mean with this. You have the Steelers, for instance, who move a Chase Claypool. Okay, well, Steelers are definitely in sell mode then, right? Yeah, totally sell. No, they're dealing from a position of strength, which is their receiver core. They're looking to add a draft pick, as again evidenced by the fact that they also went on trade for William Jackson. So they're also onboarding as they're offloading. You look at the Broncos. Oh, they moved Chubb. They're in sell mode. No, same as the Steelers. They're dealing from a position of strength. They have Randy Gregory coming back. They have Baron Browning, who stepped forward for them as a pass rusher this year, and they drafted Nick Bonito in the third round. So what you had as far as deals being made were teams that were basically having a position of strength and maybe looking to offload it, but there weren't really that many guys that were available on the market. And this has only been further sort of drilled in harder, Brendan, this year because we're in a year of extreme parity in the sport. There's not a lot of the up top dogs at the top. There's not a lot of the bottom dwellers, really true bottom dwellers that would be in that sell mode. So 17th game season, parity in the sport. Yeah, there was a lot of movement and action per se, but there wasn't necessarily that real offload situation that you'd love to take advantage of. So what this created was supply demand. There was more demand than there was supply. This drove up the prices. So I think that John Schneider didn't end up making a move because he didn't want to overpay essentially, which was what the market created by the conditions.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of how I was feeling when the Panthers got what they got for CMC, and then the Broncos got what they got for Bradley Chubb, and to a certain extent, I would say what the Panthers supposedly turned down for Brian Burns. I don't know. I still don't know if I believe that, but if let's say we do believe it for a second, I was thinking to myself, this is going to drive up everyone's asking price because they're going to be like, oh, if this guy's worth that, then my guy is worth this.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking like that super low end steal, like Quandre for a fifth or Dunlap for a seventh, it just might not be there.
I don't believe that it was there this year, is my feeling on it. Chubb going for a first round pick when he's due to be a free agent. Certainly the Dolphins can franchise tag him. But you look at that indifference of last year, Von Miller going at the same deadline for a second and a third, which certainly was a lot at the time as well. And obviously Miller's an older player, so it's not exactly apples for apples, but it's it's kind of close. And so that just showed you the prices were a little steeper this year than even in previous years. And I think the prices were steep last year. A second and a third for half season of Von Miller was fairly expensive at the time. So, that's where the prices have now gone. And I do think, Brendan, a lot of this is driven by that 17th game season. Not only is it a matter of you don't get the people selling off, that also means you have more buyers, right? If you don't have teams also in the mode of saying, we know we're not in it, we're done, we're cooked, got to look towards next year. Well, that means that they flipped over to the other side of the scale, which is we think we can kind of tighten some things down. So let's just maybe go make a move to try to propel that forward a little bit. And that's also a part of this that's factored in. I think it's also a little bit of why, as we go forward, Brendan, there's got to be more of a viewpoint from the smart general manager as he looks ahead here with the way that the situation's changed in the NFL of saying, the deadline's no longer a period of time where I can take advantage of a depressed asset. I've got to go do my work in the off season, and I got to go do my work in the draft and in free agency. And that's where we got to put this team and round them out. And I think that's a bit of a changing ground beneath us.
And another thing that I kind of think is going on is some of these teams are looking at a team like the Eagles and thinking, well, even if we're not good this year, we could be good next year. It takes you can turn around a franchise like this. So let's keep our good players, even though we're going to suck this year, because next year we could turn it all around. And you're seeing that with a lot of teams right now that have actually turned it around very violently.
Yeah, well, we're on that list too, right? We've been doing the very same thing from our end of it, where we're nobody expect us to be here, but look how fast we turn around just on a few things working out right, guys developing quickly. So yeah, I agree. I think that the NFL wants, if you're running an organization, it's hard to come to the conclusion, Brendan, that we aren't good enough. We're not close to being good enough. You want to trust your decision making. You want to trust what you've done. And obviously, general managers don't keep their job very long if they're like, I kind of messed it up in the last couple of years. Let's just kind of split the difference or get what we can get now and try to return this over. The owner goes, "Oh, really? Yeah, we'll turn it over with you no longer here." And that's I think it does lead guys more teams into that direction of saying, "No, let's ride with let's try to keep this bright. Let's try to do a couple other moves to offset this and see if we can turn this around quicker."
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well. So I'm pretty happy with us not trading for any players personally, because it's understandable, especially if the trade's not there. I was thinking maybe you could go get Shaq Thompson for like a fifth because of his contract, but knowing what Carolina was doing during this deadline, they may have wanted a second or something. So if the trade's not there, it's not there.
I mean, the teams that were really showing you they're in sell mode, you had basically two teams, and they didn't sell that much. Chicago and Detroit. And even in Chicago's case, they onboarded Chase Claypool. But you can't put the Texans on that list. Who did they sell? You can't put the Jacksonville Jaguars on that list. Who did they sell? If we're going to call these teams sellers, it's like, not really. And so the list it got really condensed and thinned out as far as the herd goes to a point where it's like, boy, just there's no moves to be had. And even those teams that would be in sell mode, like Chicago, it's like they're actually onboarding. They're going out and making an aggressive move for Claypool, who shouldn't be going for a second round pick, but they're desperate to give Fields some receiving help.
Yeah. I will say I was a little disappointment that we could not find a trade partner for Sidney Jones. He was released earlier today or waived. So I believe we save a little money if somebody picks him up. I think that's how that works.
Yeah, it's offset.
They take on some amount of his contract, but there will be no asset for it. So obviously that's a little bit of a disappointment. Also a little surprised a player like him would not fetch at least something with what you see on the market right now.
Potentially, I could see. I mean, you would think there'd be there's always a need at cornerback, and there'd be a team out there you think that would be willing to jump. Obviously, he's only a zone corner, Brendan, so he's got to go to a zone-based team. He couldn't go to a team that wants to run any kind of man. He's not looked great this year so far when he's been on the football field. And though last year he was pretty solid for us, he doesn't exactly have a long track record of playing particularly well. So I think that that's in itself enough to be where teams go, eh. And they probably also knew at the end of the day what we were going to do, which was Trey Brown was going to come off IR eventually, and you were going to then have to make another move, which was probably releasing Sidney at that point because they do seem, I guess, higher on Artie Burns.
Yeah, that's all pretty accurate. So the best thing that happened during the trade deadline, just to go over this real quick, is you look at what the other teams did. Green Bay did not bail themselves out. They're still the same team. Tampa Bay didn't bail themselves out. They're still, by and large, the same team that they were before the deadline.
Yep.
I mean, San Fran took on some stuff, but I don't know how much better it makes them. Jimmy's still their quarterback. They didn't trade for a quarterback, so I don't think that matters that much.
Yeah.
Cardinals didn't really do that much. They already got Robbie Anderson, I guess, but they didn't like bail themselves out. The Rams weren't able to bail themselves out at the deadline. They weren't able to do anything, I think.
No, and I do believe they were the team that was in on Burns, but that's why we called that a week ago. That's why the 2 first round picks are kind of a misnomer in that situation. It's 2 first round picks in like 2026 or something.
Yeah, for Scott Fitterer's grandchildren to utilize when they're taking over as GM.
I guess so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
Billy Frederitter.
Yeah. So the NFC still a little bit weak.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it's still vulnerable is the word I would use, Brendan. You know, this is a year for where we could jump in and kind of strike right now if things break in our favor, but you don't have any teams really running away with it. We'll see where the Eagles go with. They certainly, I guess, could be one of those teams, but everything is definitely opened up for the Seahawks team to jump forward and be good this year right now, and then let the cards fall where they may in the playoffs if you can get to it at that point. But yeah, I agree. No team really, to me, substantially took a step forward. Maybe you could give the Vikings a little bit of a nod for what they did in bringing on Hawkinson. It was an odd trade, by the way, where you see a deal moved in between the division like that between foes. Odd of the Lions to move off of Hawkinson, who absolutely decimated us when we played him a couple weeks ago. I don't know what to make of that trade a little bit, but from the Vikings standpoint, they're going to have to like that a lot because once Irv Smith, who does have, I think, a high ankle sprain, will be out for a little while. Once he does return, if they're to a playoff push time, they've got now 2 tight ends, 2 receivers. They can run some different things at you in that respect and make it very tough on you. I like that move for the Vikings. So they are the one team I think that did actually, help themselves a little bit, but that's nothing compared to you look down the chart to the other teams across this NFC conference, and there wasn't, to your point, substantial upgrade really made.
Yeah, and also the Broncos did sell off a little bit at the deadline.
That was a beautiful thing, wasn't it? Wasn't it wonderful to see?
I still feel like if Trevor Lawrence doesn't let us all down on Sunday morning, they would have gotten rid of Judy too. Maybe Hamler, maybe Risner.
Yeah.
But those guys, you can talk yourself into keeping. Risner's good, first of all. You should probably just commit to him. And Judy and Hamler both have one more year on their deals after this year. But Chubb was clearly a guy they were going to lose at the end of the year, so much easier.
Yeah, they weren't going to have the money to spend on Chubb. He was having a good year. He was going to earn he'll probably be somewhere in that 15 to 20 range per season when it's all said and done on that. So I agree with you. If Lawrence could have just not thrown the interception at the 1 yard line on first down, that would have been awesome, But nonetheless, that Denver Bronco team, I don't think is going to be turning this around anytime soon. They barely just glided past the Jaguar team that's not particularly good. The offense does continue to look worse. They just lost what has been their best defensive player this year. Chubb has been that for them, in my opinion. And that's got to have, maybe Gregory comes back and he can be something, similar to what he's given them, but that's still a loss. And Gregory is coming off an injury. And it does, to me, weaken them down as their schedule is about to get much tougher.
Yeah, I mean, nothing is saving that offense.
No.
What's going to happen there? Javante's not coming back. The Garrett Bowles is not coming back.
Tim Patrick.
Oh yeah, Tim Patrick also not coming back. I do think their defense will hold up surprisingly well without Chubb because at edge they've still got Gregory, Browning, Benito, and Jacob Martin, who they traded for.
They did, yeah.
So that's not bad. That's not a bad 4-man edge rotation.
No, I think the Broncos sort of split the difference here, right? They didn't go full on into, oh, hell, this ain't working. I think they went, well, this most likely isn't working. So let's bring back assets into the room here if we can. And they set the stage for this offseason. It starts to make sense to me, Brendan, that maybe this was to the Broncos general manager's credit. This was a kind of maybe their long-term plan because it was an odd offseason to watch them go out and you're signing Gregory, you're signing DJ Jones, and then you're taking with your top pick, your 3rd round pick already down your first 2, you're going with Nick Benito as another pass rusher. And you go, but you already got Browning there and you got Chubb. What are you guys doing? Maybe this was the plan and the thought process that they could get this kind of trade done eventually one way or another. And good on them with it. But it is also a little bit of, we are taking, even if it's just a half step back, you are taking a little bit of a half step back when you lose your best defensive player. That's going to occur no matter what you got waiting in the wings.
Right. So that was about it for this trade deadline, Seahawks wise. Not a heck of a lot going on. You didn't see a lot of disturbances in the conference, which I considered to be a win. Um, maybe next year. Maybe next year we'll be a little more involved. But I think with that, we can just start talking about this game, which is a lot more exciting because things actually happened out there.
Boy, did it ever.
So 27-13, and the I don't even know where to really start with this one, but the turnaround on this defense, have you ever seen anything like it where it doesn't happen gradually? It happens instantly. They just go from maybe the worst to maybe the best defense in the league.
No, obviously your first blush here, you go, well, yeah, the last couple of years you've done something similar, and though you've done something similar as a turnaround, it's not been worse to first turnaround. It's been worse to get us to middle of the road. That's what you've done. And this year, in the last 3 games, it's been to first down the metric, whatever advanced metric you want to, you put it all together. You've been the best defensive team in football over the last 3 weeks. And I can't think of a time that I've seen a team turn it around like that substantially, 0 to hero. It's amazing. It's kind of defies explanation. You're obviously, benefiting from some other outside factors. The Chargers come into that game, they're down Keenan Allen, they're down Rashawn Slater, no Corey Linsley, I believe, in that game, or just coming back of injury. You caught him kind of at the right, moment. With the Cardinals, there's no DeAndre Hopkins. They're definitely not as at necessarily full strength with that. And this past week, Giants were definitely a walking wounded unit coming into this, down a couple of receivers, down a couple of offensive linemen. You are catching some teams a little bit right, but still doesn't explain going from the back end to the front end. Again, and to Brendan, where you can't really point to something they've done substantially from a schematic aspect of things, or that it's a matter of, you flip this player and that player out, and that's this. There are some players that have been moved in that have helped, but it's just that they're just playing better across the board, really.
Yeah, I do think it was a big deal to stop using the 2 main fronts on neutral downs.
Agreed.
I do think it was a good idea to make sure that Barton's only playing like half the game instead of the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan Neal subbing in has been massive because he had another really good game in this Giants game, by the way, I think.
He did. Yeah. PFF had him 75. I thought he played a whale of a game out there.
Yeah. So it's kind of crazy because the thing to remember is the week before this run on defense happened, we played a Saints team with no Winston, no Michael Thomas, no Jarvis Landry. Chris Olave left the game early. Like, they had those injuries too. They had some stuff on the offensive line, I think, too.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter. They dropped 30. What was it? 39? Yeah, they dropped 30.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah. So, and even like the games before that, you're playing the Lions with none of their receivers. You're playing the Lions practice squad wide receivers, and they're putting up 45. So we were playing substandard opposition before, and it didn't matter. But something drastic has changed, and it's changing in a way I've never seen before in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't. It's kind of weird. I related it to my post game stream. It's like you're watching the Geno Smith turnaround happening on your defense, but happening all at once rather than through a 10-year period. It just happens all in one season over the course of a couple of games. And you're right. It's a good point about you have dealt with undermanned teams that have been able to, that you still can't stop. So that point does definitely stand. I think just built within is I still would love, not love, but it's going to be interesting to watch this team when they do go into against an offense that does have a little bit more hands on deck and the challenges that they present to you at that point. But nonetheless, let's not take away from the fact they're playing amazing football. They're stopping the run. They're limiting the big play. They're getting turnovers. They're creating pressure, everything you would want a defense to do across the board, Brendan. It's not just one thing they're doing, right? Like, they're not just like they're causing a lot of fumbles or some freakish bad play. It's all across the board. You're playing strongly, defensively speaking.
And this game, there might have been a couple of fumbles, though. Let's be real.
Yeah. No, there was a couple. But
I mean, it's beyond that. Like, I was looking at the snap counts for the defensive line in this game. Al Woods, once again, didn't play that much, and Brian Monet played barely at all. Those are your 2 big run stuffers. And Saquon's going nowhere that whole game. Still, most of this defensive line snaps went to the smaller guys like Shelby, Quentin Jefferson, and this game, actually, LJ Collier actually did a couple of positive things out there. So But yeah, it's those guys. It's not the 330, 340-pound guys. And yet you're still stopping the run 20 times better than you were to start the season. It's very weird to me how that has actually worked out in a way that I didn't think was going to happen.
And you had a Giants team coming in that was one of the better, running teams in all the NFL, and not just with the running back, but with the quarterback as well. So that was a substantial test that you answered the bell on if you're the Seahawks team. And yeah, I wish I had a better explanation. I know many ways it's our kind of job to have an explanation on this kind of stuff. But as you said, when you see things happen that you've never really seen before in the NFL, it's harder to have a baseline of explanation for why it's occurring. And you're right about the 2-man fronts, the 4-man fronts, whatever we want to call them, that they've done away with. I think when you did those 4-man fronts, by the way, too, you had those 2 big bodies out there as opposed to having maybe the 3 lighter guys, kind of out there right now. But everybody's doing their job. They're locking in. Nobody's being a superhero, but everybody's doing their job. And that stands out to you when you stop the run, because you don't stop the run with just having a game wrecker in there usually. It's because guys are maintaining their gap integrity, not trying to go play hero ball, leaving their gap and allowing a cutback lane. And especially the Saquon Barkley guy, that's what happens. You get a guy defensively on that line who's going, I got to get out there to him because he's going to bust off the play. If I don't, then he leaves that gap and Saquon goes. You just got to trust your guy next to your shoulder is going to handle his gap. His guy next to him is going to handle his. And if everybody's controlling their job at that point, there's no cutback spot for Saquon. There's very little room to go. And I thought Saquon played a really great game. It's just that the defense held up so well against the run and played their gap so well. And everybody was, doing their job, where he was having to really work for whatever yards he got. He was having to create them. And I thought that was representatory of the fact that defense was all kind of playing together in that stop and the run. It was everybody doing their job.
Yeah, I think both running backs in this game kind of the same thing, where you're just waiting for one of them to bust the 60-yard run, and it never comes.
Yeah.
I know with Walker, there were a couple plays where it seemed like he was gone, and then somebody would grab his shoelace or something.
Yeah, he was up. He had a couple of plays where he was just inches away from breaking it. And the last guy to get a tackle in there before he busts off a 30, 40, 50-yard run dove and grabbed his ankle and swept through. But yeah, both teams defensively speaking, both teams, you've got to give defenses the tip of the cap, including the Giants in this one, and saying they did a good job of stopping the run, staying tight on the run. When you look at Geno Smith as well, and we'll talk about the offense second, but this is why you also end up throwing a lot, is because you had the Giants team, much like I feel like the Chargers team, who came up and they're really amped up to stop that run. We got to stop this Seahawks rushing attack. We got to devote resources to stopping this rushing attack. Okay. Devote your resources. We'll go a different route and we'll beat you the other way. We'll go to your vulnerability then. We'll go to your weakness that you're creating by putting so much resources to that front side item that you're so very worried about. I don't know that the Seahawks have to dedicate as much front side stuff to stopping the run and how they've stopped the run recently. I know Neal's come up and help you as sometimes an 8th man in the box, but I think they're also running still a lot of the cover 2 stuff on the background, and they're also still running, kind of their coverages as they always used to run them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's another thing that happened that's kind of good news for the Seahawks at the trade deadline. The Giants somehow did not add a receiver at the deadline, which, after watching that whole game on Sunday, seems kind of like insanity if they're actually going for any kind of long-term success this year. Because, we saw it up close and personal. Secondary basically dominated that whole game, it felt like.
Yeah, I do as well. I think the Giants are kind of in the same place we are, and where they landed at this deadline, where they saw probably the prices out there and the cost. They knew this year for where they're playing, they're a little over their skis, or a little past to the expectation people had for them. And so they're still thinking, look, it's good. We're out to the start. We can go play for the push the playoffs, but we've got to look at this through a long-term view of this, how we want to address this position and where we want to go with it. And you had the Claypools, you had your Ridleys. And there was some movement this trade deadline, but there wasn't really a lot out there to be out there and had. And I think they just went, let's just let this year play out and see where it goes. And it's all kind of bonus. And it's great. We're ahead of the curve as far as our plan goes, but let's not try to force it either. And I think that was smart of them to do. I think, it's bad where their receiver core is, but they just have to, I think, maintain ground. I would love to see them try to maybe go look at the Moore trade with the Jets if that was out there, right? That would have been the one to probably go make if they were going to try to go make an aggressive deal.
I mean, the Jets got to move one of those disgruntled wide receivers, right? They got Denzel Mims and Elijah Moore. You can't have 2 of them. They're going to start talking to each other, and then they're just going to snowball.
On a team that wants to run the ball a lot. That's it. That's where, from the Jets standpoint, Maybe you weren't getting the offer you wanted, and you're watching all these high prices out there. But from the Jets general manager standpoint, you got to move one of those guys. Moore's already popping off over there. Mims has not been. What are you doing? Just make the move at that point, get what you can kind of get and roll on with it. But I have the feeling that if those guys were out there because the market prices where they were probably asking for everything for those guys, or way too much.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it from the outside, I wouldn't expect to get any more than like a 4th-round pick for Elijah Moore. He hasn't done anything much yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, other than throw a fit on the sideline in his second season in the league.
Yeah.
You're not going to get, you're going to get less for Mims. And that's the reality of the NFL when you move guys like that. It's part of why I said I think I'm really kind of surprised. I know Claypool's done a little bit more than those two guys, but not a whole lot more to be able to garner that 2nd-round pick like he did. That was rough, but that's where you don't get a deal like Moore, because that's what Douglas looks at for the Jets, going, well, they can get that, I should get that. Then no, not really.
Yeah, I wondered about that. I feel like Chase Claypool's reputation is bigger than his actual production so far in the NFL. People think he's a star already when he's not.
No, I think it's also he's got that freakish talent element where when he can make a play in here and there and really like, oh my God, that's like play a few guys can make in this league right there that he just did. But consistency, neck up stuff, I have some questions with Chase in that respect of things. Remember last year where I think he made a 1st down, clock's ticking down, and he's got to do this whole run up and do this whole gesturing dance move off of a 1st down as the clock's ticking down. And it's just like,
I remember that.
That was a rough one. That was not a good look. And I just, that there's certain plays, Brendan, with guys, that seem to, and it's probably a bad way of putting him, but it's like, that just represents kind of a view of a guy that'll have on a play. It's like, that's it right there. For me, with the way I look at, Chase, with it's like, you made the catch, you did something awesome, but there's always kind of a shaking your head on the end of it.
Yeah, that's fair. I remember scouting him in college and liking him a decent amount, but that's not the only thing he's done that's kind of stupid. He's shown a lack of situational awareness on other occasions as well. But the only thing, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, a few people in my comment sections have disagreed when I made this point, but I think in some ways that game should be evidence of Darrell Taylor still having some value in this league, because he basically misses the whole game. And there were several 3rd and longs in this game where Daniel Jones just had like 8 seconds back there. So even though we got the 5 sacks and even though we got a decent number of pressures, there were a lot of plays I was looking at that was going, Darrell Taylor would not be letting this happen right now. Whatever you can say about him, he can come in 3rd and long and get to the quarterback. So I think in some ways him missing this game may have been a little bit of proof that he is at least good in that area. How did you feel about that?
I mean, I did I guess a little bit. You probably had to play guys a little bit more snaps than you wanted to play. Boye Mafe has been a work in progress as a pass rusher. I look at Boye Mafe and Darrell Taylor and I just go, let me put those two guys together as one player right now. Not for the future, but just right now, where I go Mafe early down, Taylor as, like you said, just the pass rush as your guy. I think if you put him in the role where he doesn't have to run, defend, and you can keep him fresh, Taylor's got value, and Taylor can be he can be a proficient pass rusher for you. I don't think he'll ever be a high volume guy in that respect, but like you said, over the course of a game like that, would he have gotten a play or two that he got through the back end and strip sack or cause something to happen? Yeah, probably would have on a day like that, especially with the backup tackle situation where it was for the Giants. But I will say this, Bruce Irvin, to me, even at his age, played a much better game than what I've seen from Taylor, showing up in a variety of different respects, more than Taylor, more active than Taylor's been. I'm a little down on Taylor at the end of the day. Pass. I get him pass rush reps, and he can give me a decent amount of pressures and be better than your average bear out there with it. But he's got a lot to prove to me, Brendan, in the respect of the consistency's not been there outside of his flash of 5 sacks in 6 or 7 games last year. You take all the remaining games through last season, you take all the games to the start of this year that he's played in, you're not getting any production or very much production from him as a pass rusher at all. There's some moments. There's the Mariota strip sack, and he was getting close the last couple of weeks. I think to your point on this, he has been getting, Kitty, come on. Please, for the love of God. He's been getting better in the last couple of weeks in his consistency and in big play moments, but it's the big play moments that then stand out to you where it's like strip sack here, strip sack there, almost a strip sack against the Cardinals. But is the pressure always coming in there consistently with him? And to me, it's just not quite been there yet. Maybe it will if he's a little more fresher. Maybe it is if you get boy him off of those run snaps. But I'm probably a little more down right now as I view Darrell Taylor. I look at him as a pass rusher where it's quick, he's fast, he's got bend. He's not added to his arsenal as far as pass rush moves. He doesn't use his hands particularly well here into his third season. He's a dip, rip, just going to try to get past your guy, which that's fine, but it's also going to lead to some limitations, I think, within your game too.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of truth there. I just remember watching some of these 3rd and longs in this game that the Giants converted, thinking to myself, Darrell Taylor, whatever he is as a player, would not be allowing this to happen right now.
I think what would have helped it a little bit would have been being able to have Darrell Taylor out there and have a 4-man rotation. I mean, that's what you really need here. Uchenna Nwosu is playing too many snaps, and he might have become I don't know if he was announced this week or not, but he should be announced as the defensive player of the week in the NFC again, second time hopefully this year that he gets those honors, but he's also playing too many snaps. And you need to start augmenting load balancing here just a little bit. And hopefully now that Bruce Irvin's in here and able to show a little bit of an effect, he can be the Al Woods of the outside linebackers, the guy that gets the 35% of the snaps, which is just enough to balance everything off where Taylor's fresh, Maffe's fresh, Nwosu's fresh, and it all can work. Because right now you're basically running every game with 3 guys. And I think that gets them tired out over the course of the game because there's just, even though there is a rotational, it is still kind of just a little bit too many, probably 15, 20% too many snaps on those guys at that point.
Yeah, Bruce Irvin basically had to play that whole game because of Taylor's injury too, and he did stuff, making plays.
He did. I would not have expected him to look that good 2 weeks coming off of his couch at 34 years old, coming off an ACL that was a botched surgery on, according to Irvin, at the time that he had it. Yeah. So I wouldn't have thought he was anywhere close to being what we saw from him out on the football field. And Frank Brennan, didn't you feel like he provided a little bit of that old timey Legion of Boom magic a little bit to him, and that not in the respect, I'm not trying to reference just because he was on that, but in that sort of just chip on his shoulder, little bit playing with a little bit of an edge, like I saw him. You got the one play where he throws the quarterback at the running back and gets a tackle. You got another play where it wasn't even a play that you had to watch it near the end. It was very much kind of on the sly where running back comes out to kind of block him and he's kind of annoyed by the running back doing it. And he just grabs him by his head and throws him to the ground.
I missed that.
Yeah, it was right at the end, and it was just at the end of the game with it. But he had a little bit of that old spirit to him of just a little gnarly, little nasty, and he definitely is going to help provide a little bit of that component, I think, to this defense that you need to have as a defense. That if you have it, you'll be a better defense for it. And it's been missing, I think, in recent years at times, a little bit of that edge to things. Be interesting to see if he can kind of do it. But that was really what stood out to me as much as anything. With his quickness is still there with him, speed still there with them, even the strength still, there with them. It was interesting. I did not expect it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody could have expected it. I don't know how long it's going to last because Alton's probably going to come back at some point, but that could be a while from now. The way Pete's talking about it, it seems like he's a ways away.
I would be playing Bruce Irvin over Alton snaps at this point. If you're a team if you're to me a team that's in the top of the division, and this isn't just we got to figure out what we got kind of season, I feel for Alton, but I know what I'm getting out of Bruce, and Bruce is going to give me a better play than right now Alton Robinson is, and I feel pretty strongly about that. You're going to be asking Alton to go from a 4-3 defensive end to a 3-4 outside linebacker, which is not his bag. And this is Bruce Irvin's bag. He can do this all day long. I just think it's a better fit to just run with Irvin at this point.
Yeah, I mean, apparently Alton lost a lot of weight this offseason to prepare for playing in this defense. So I don't want to completely forget about him, but you are probably right for now.
It still does always come down to it though, too, with the, it's not the same position. It's not the same requirements. It's not the same situation. And so you got a guy that's been his whole life a 4-3 defensive end. And now you ask him to go suddenly be a 3-4 outside linebacker. It can be an easier said than done thing. And he may be good at it. He may take to it, duck to water, but do I want to wait and make sure of that and then put Irvin back and hope and let him work through the kinks of learning the position now through this year at that point? Or do I want to just kind of ride with a good rotational guy and start getting that rotation set and right? Because part of this is, again, I think coming down to, we got the 4-man going through, Brendan. those moments you're talking about that Daniel Jones had in this game where he's just sitting in the pocket for all that time period, I think that starts to go down a little bit as guys are able to just basically put the gear all the way down to the floor on every single play and not have to think about leaving something in the tank.
Yeah, I can get behind that. And like you said, Bruce has earned some credibility here. He played almost 50 snaps in that game and he held up pretty much throughout. So,
Yeah.
yeah, what else is there to say about this defense? The turnaround is historic.
It is. I think the Ryan Neal aspects helped out. Boy, has he been playing awesome. He's playing his best football for the Hawks, and he's had some bright moments for us. But he is absolutely right now playing at his best. The last couple of games, he's played at basically a Pro Bowl level from the strong safety position. I think some of the linebackers have gotten a little bit better. Brooks and Barton have gotten just a smidge better. You're right about Barton being played less, which is maybe probably why it's not looked as bad at times. He got beaten coverage in this game on a play. But he was also there at the end and almost had a ball picked off that he made a play on. And it was a good play, too, because you saw both Jordan Brooks and him on that play, both converging. They both were right on it on that particular play, which was tremendous. I think, too, Brendan, the thing that stands out to me the last 3 weeks that's I think, one of the biggest takeaways for me with this defense is the ability to start to shut down the short offense. And I'm not talking about dwarfs out on the football field. I'm talking about the short game, the 4-yard completions that the guy runs for 8 or 9 yards on a given play where it's just thrown to the flat or it's a bubble screen or whatever it may be. They really tighten their zones up over the course of the last couple of weeks going up against teams that between the Cardinals, Giants, and the Chargers, you have 3 of the teams that are, if you've got a top, 8 teams in the league that want to run the short game and just dink and dunk you to death, those are 3 of your top, if not 8, top 5 teams maybe. And in the past, in Carroll's recent past with his defenses, it's been a big issue of allowing yourself to be bled to death slowly, like one little cut just dripping out throughout the whole game, where you let offenses slowly matriculate the ball up the football field, right? Just and you're just trying to protect against the deep ball the whole time. Well, now there's been a bit of an adjustment to my eyes in the last couple of weeks. You're playing these routes a little bit tougher. You're getting a little bit tighter on things. There were moments in this game, Brendan, where you had running backs running up the football field, and you were asking Daniel, you're pushing Daniel Jones the way he doesn't want to do, because you can see in this game, right? He does not want to throw to the sidelines. He does not want to. He does not. He's like Garoppolo. He does not want to go outside the hash marks. And you had outside linebackers like Mafe and Uchenna having to carry running backs up the football field. And I believe that part of the reason Daniel Jones gets to the progression read of that in those moments, and he overthrew every single one. Every one was a horrible throw. But the reason I think he got to that progression point was he was seeing Seahawks lock down the shorter stuff inside, and it was forcing him to then go to the deep route at that point. So I like that. I like that kind of locking things down and tighten that up a little bit. Don't just give those teams that, especially when that's what they want to do. Force them into what they don't want to do.
Yeah, and I think most teams in the NFL right now want to have that short passing attack that you're talking about. It's not just these last few teams are the ones that happen to do it. A lot of teams seem into it. So it's a good thing to be good against.
100%. Your good point. It is where teams are going. Every offense to some degree is going to have a little bit of it within it. It's more going to run some are going to run less. But the fact that they're shutting that down where it has been an issue in the past at times, it's good to see. It's really good to see. And I think if you've done it against these 3 teams, it shows you can do it kind of going forward. And that's just something more to get excited about where this defense is going, because it means that it's sustainable, I think, a little bit. Just one more item towards sustainability, let's say.
Right. Devin Martzall, thank you for the $4.99 first donation of the day. Thank you, Devin. Feels good to feel good about our team. Good to see you guys. Go Hawks.
What's up, Devin?
Yeah, I can get behind that message. And yeah, I mean, the one thing that I kept saying about this Giants game before and after was not only did we win, but I watched us win and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, it's a good team we're playing, but I still see this team win and it makes sense. It's not like earlier in the season when maybe it would have been like amazing to win a game and you're just shocked, like, wow, I can't believe we won a game. No, this is starting to become expected. I think that's the main thing that's really happening here. That's exciting.
Well, and something that stands out with these wins, and a lot of these wins this given year, Brendan, is, we say very often, and rightfully so, that the game comes down to your quarterback, and it's going to come down to the last drive of the game. More often than not, comes down to that last drive of the game. I think this team is showing you, as we look at the blueprint, not only for how we win this year, Brendan, but how we win going forward, that in fact, there are other ways to win football games. And that if you have a complete team and you're able to be able to lean on the strength of that team in total and not have very many weaknesses, that you can get out in front of teams. And once that occurs, then it's about kind of just putting your foot on their neck and pressing down. And what you've done the last 3 weeks is basically kind of just that. Yeah, the Giants held in this game for a good amount of time. Yeah, the special teams turnovers, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, factored into helping you a long way. But because you have a strong team, because you do lean on your special teams as a truly big part of your football, as that true third rung of your team, that's how you get those kind of plays, because it's by the philosophy and the designs by how you built the team itself to do that. And so we arrive at a state of going, I start to wonder a little bit as I look at some of these games and some of these wins this year and going, is that as much of a necessity? We've taken it for granted that it is. And I think part of the reason, Brendan, we've gotten to that thought process that it all is about, well, do you have the quarterback at the end of the game that can drive you up the football field? Well, some of that may be born out of the fact that we've had a quarterback in recent years that hasn't been able to always stay consistent throughout the course of the early parts of the game. And so that you're ending at a point where you're having to have the miracle drive to bring you back, or you've had a defense that's fallen on its face. So you've scratched and fought your way to get back into it. So you need that drive at the end of the game. I think there's a little bit of an opening here to maybe a different methodology and approach to this. What do you think?
I would be careful about that, because even with the great teams, I see this. Like the Rams last year, their whole playoff run was built on game-winning drives late in the fourth quarter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I look at that and I go, if a team that stacked still has to mount 3 fourth quarter last minute drives to win the Super Bowl, then I would assume that any team would probably have to face that at some point. Like, I guess you could say that the 2013 Seahawks never had to face that position, at least in the playoffs and throughout most of their regular season games. But even them, as stacked as they were, they had to come back at the end against Houston, against Tampa Bay. I think there were a couple other games sprinkled in there as well. So I wouldn't get off of that, but it's also kind of becoming moot, because we've seen Geno more or less come through in those situations a couple times now. Against Atlanta, he had us down to the 8-yard line, and then Damian Lewis committed a penalty that kind of killed it. Against the Giants, the game was tied in the fourth quarter, and he, 5 for 5 for 75 yards?
Yeah, awesome drive by him. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. He's shown a couple moments where he can go get the job done. The Detroit game, I think you had to, in that one, that was tied down the wire. You needed to score.
He had to keep scoring.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'd absolutely be apropos with him.
Yeah. But I'm not thinking there's a way around that inevitability in the modern NFL, where quite often you see whoever has the ball last wins. I'm not moving off of that quite yet.
Understandable. Just something worth tracking.
K soon. Thank you for the $1.99. I thought we would have replaced Barton by now. No? Huh. Well, there are a few different angles to talk about this one from. What do you think?
You got to have somebody available who's going to be better than Barton, and is going to be an upgrade. First off, which I think that, considering the middle linebackers that were moving at this trade deadline, if I'm not mistaken, I think Roquan Smith was the only middle linebacker that was moved in this trade deadline. So there wasn't exactly a lot of people out there to go get or to move for. And so that's not there to be had. So then if that's not, do you want to overpay for a Roquan, or do you want to overpay for a guy who maybe isn't really available, but the team will go, well, if you overpay, then he'll become available? No. I mean, second round pick for Shaq Thompson, if the Panthers were like, no, he's not, well, for a second rounder, there just isn't the guy. And I think that I've been barking for a while about wanting to see Barton replaced and see somebody better put in there, because I think that there's been times this year he's been one of the weakest spots on your defense, and teams have attacked him at the same time as that. So they've gone after him in a lot of ways that they go after Darrell Taylor on early rundowns when he's out there. So I would love to see it too soon, but I just think there wasn't a deal out there to be had that made sense.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate summation of why nothing happened. But I think you could make an argument that Barton's playing a little bit better lately, like mostly because he's not playing as much. There are some people on Twitter like Matty F. Brown who insist that he's doing fine. I don't totally buy it the way that he's selling it, but I do say, okay, at least we haven't had the play where he tries to shove TJ Hawkinson out of bounds and it looks like he's trying to push a shopping cart down the aisle or something.
Yeah. No, he's been a little bit better. But it's also, I think your point about the reduced snaps is a big part of this, going more kneel, going more defensive back heavy at times. Going to more of the 3-4, but just some of the other things as well. I mean, the 4-man fronts were killing him as much as anybody too, so that's helped him out. Not I thought with Barton, for instance, I think his best position is a 4-3 middle linebacker. I think if he could theoretically maybe even start in this league as that, I think, but not within a 3-4 middle linebacker, and not as a Will, and not as a Sam and a 4. So there's nothing else but that. Brendan is essentially where I land with that, but I'd love to have seen it moved. It's just there wasn't a deal out there to be had, and there has to be that to do it. Part of why I say we go into these off season when we got these positions like a Barton, you can't think of it like, we'll get to the deadline and maybe we'll find something. You got to deal with it training camp or in the off season or when there's a deal to be had to be done, because it's not necessarily going to open up. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. If the Roquan Smith trade proved anything, it's that Jordan Brooks is better than Patrick Queen, clearly, right?
Yes, it does. Interesting, that trade, huh? You have two Seattle and Ravens both probably vying for that. Seattle was on the line. I bet they probably had a third plus on the table, probably third and a fifth, and they probably beat them with a 2 and a 5 to get the deal done. But you have two teams in the Ravens and Seahawks probably mostly vying for Roquan, which were the two teams that selected the linebackers and back-to-back picks in that first round, and Jordan Brooks and Patrick Queen. But neither have exactly panned out 100%. But Jordan Brooks has been the better player than Queen, I think, by pretty big mark.
Yeah. The Patrick Queen thing is a mystery. Like, he makes a ton of plays, and yet it seems like he's not any good at football. It's bizarre.
It's all the in-between stuff, man. He'll give you the flash, but not the consistency, I guess. I haven't watched him a lot though, so I can't speak on him.
Mumbles, thank you for the $20 donation.
Woo!
We talked about Wilson getting paid at $35 million. He needs to elevate the team the last 2 years. Do you think Geno is elevating the team enough to have it be worth for him to get a big contract? Where are we on him currently? Yeah. Let me actually keep that up. We need to have a talk about this crop of college quarterbacks, I think, this week, because I think we can officially say it's not panning out the way we were hoping, maybe.
100%. I've reached my point this week where I've started to change my track on this. For a while I've been all just about really let's just get the quarterback stay to the blueprint. But I think your point is apropos in the respect of these college quarterbacks this year started out really hot. The guys have kind of come back down to size a little bit. There's not the runaway guy that's far and away the guy that stands out to you as the guy you want to go take. There's a lot of questions, and as much as I like Levis, he had a awful game. As much as I still think there's a lot of explanation for why he has these kind of games like he had, I can't throw it and put it all onto that. And the other part of this is the counter to this as well, being that every week Geno continues to play at a remarkable level. Every week, stacking performance after performance after performance, it reaches a point where you go, okay, he seems to be able to do this on into the future, at least for the next couple of years. And if I'm getting this performance at the quarterback position, this now leads me more pushing in the direction of saying it's time now for me, Brendan, to move off quarterback. Maybe in the second, third round, you could talk me into something. Maybe in that we can talk about that. But now that would be done with the thought process of bringing Geno back into the fray. And you're quick. You're also, the last part of this, Brendan, is that you're faster to being into an elite status than you thought. That's the part this factors into as well. We're not talking 2024. Maybe we can try to push for a Super Bowl at that point. You bring Geno back, you put those picks on just the best player available. You've got that money to spend. There's no doubt that you could theoretically push yourself into a place of being an elite team and being one of those, Super Bowl contenders preseason, and how it's viewed from a national perspective of things, whatever that's worth. But it will come down to what the cost is at that point. He mentions, Brendan, $35 million, which, if we're going new market dollars for when we talk about when Wilson was around $35 million, the new money on the new cap for that would be having Geno up around 40. We talked about getting to Geno to 40 million a year. That's going to make me have to brace myself and go no. But Mumbles brings up a great question, which is actually at the head of this point, which is Geno elevating the team? Yeah, he is. So I don't have a good reason why I bristle at the 40 million, because he is doing those things I was always calling upon Wilson to do. He's doing it with his control at the line of scrimmage, changing plays, with his leadership, going to Lockett, going to Eskridge on the sideline this past game. You saw it. He's doing things to pull guys up and not push him down, but not just sort of just going, I'm just going to play as I play, and whatever happens, happens. So I've been wanting to pay him, Brennan, but 40 million, which that would be what 35, that's where it's going to get too costly for me. I think I could probably at the end of the day get talked into 30 million on a 4-year deal per year, so 4 years, 120 million, you give him a lot of guaranteed, you move the numbers around. I don't want to go that high. I do think it's going in that direction of that's where the price of doing business is going to lie.
Yeah, and as to the conversation about college quarterbacks, I just want to say one thing. I'm still very high on CJ Stroud. It's just I don't think we're going to have the chance to get him. Let me be clear about that. But otherwise, yeah, it hasn't shaken out the way we were hoping. Levis is I'm still a big fan of Levis. That was not a good game he played, obviously. You've got guys like I still just can't love Bryce Young.
Mhm.
Hendon Hooker might be creeping up into the draft into like the upper part of the first round now, to the point where the value is not necessarily going to be there because he's the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman now. Actually,
Is he really?
yeah,
Well, yeah, he should
betting
be. He
markets.
should be. Yeah, I mean, he should be. And I do think Brendan, he's going to creep into the first round because of the fact that there isn't as much the runaway guys here in this draft. You know what I
Right.
mean? There's
Hmm. And the bigger problem is the guys that we were hoping would rise as the season went on never really got there. Like Will Rogers. Will Rogers, eh? I'd really like Devin Leary, but then he got hurt. He's probably a kind of a day 3 pick at best at this point.
Mhm.
Cam Ward is very inconsistent. I still like him, but he's not a year 1 starter if he comes out this year. I don't think DJU's coming out. I don't think Anthony Richardson's coming out. So it is not the QB class we were being advertised.
No,
So
it's
because
not.
of that, you might go after Geno.
Yeah. I like him too. With like Stroud, for instance, I like him, but I got worries with him. Like he can't play off script really. Everything's designed really easy. And if it's all simple and right in front of him, he's got it. And he's great accuracy, great mechanics, good arm, all that stuff. But Brendan, this is where I get worried with those Ohio State quarterbacks, just like the Alabama ones. Well, when it's simple and easy and it's all right there in front of him, he executes it remarkably. But when things start to get dirty, it starts to get tough for him, and he really it breaks down quickly. And he doesn't have the mobility in the pocket, or it doesn't really play off script really well. And it's like, well, that's the NFL game's a lot of times about stuff having to fall off script for you. And you're setting up good offensive linemen here to hold up. But I do have worries with them a little bit in that respect. And Levis, like I said, I do give him the benefit of doubt. Hooker could be the guy who ends up being the best of the bunch when it's all said and done, though he's the older prospect on things. And you're talking about first round for him. That'd give me a lot of hesitancy at his age to bring him in, though he is having the season he is. And not just this season, he was good last year too. We got to also acknowledge he was good last year. And he's gotten better even this season. But it all goes into you put it all in, Brendan, in this situation. You look at the quarterbacks, you really evaluate where Geno is, and then you look at where the team is. You put those 3 big factors together and you come out of it, I think, pretty logically speaking, going, Geno's really the one that makes the most sense here as we operate right now. And even if we love Stroud, like you said, the best point of that is he's not going to be there when we pick. He's going to be taken in the top 5, if not the number 1 overall guy.
I think he's number 1. I
Yeah,
think
he's
he's number 1.
probably is going to be number 1. So you're not really in that position again. You're probably not. I know people go, Levis isn't even going to go in the first round. I get people telling me this in my chat. He's not even that good. Like he's going to go in the first round. He may end up even going in that top 10. You may not even have an option to get him. You're looking at Hooker or KJ Jefferson as being the other 2 guys you go at. And I'll tell you this, Brent, it's almost looking like too. Next year's draft for the quarterbacks is actually looking better, with Caleb Williams. And I think AR-15 goes back, like you said. I think Cam Ward goes back to school as well. DJU goes at, so like next year's actually going to be maybe the better one when it's all said and done. But
Quinn Ewers, I think his name is.
Yep, Quinn Ewers out of Texas. He'll be another guy in that. So it's it's always hard to predict, but it does look a little bit better. What's your price you're going on with Geno? Do you have
I'm at this point, I guess my high water mark would be something like 4 years, 120 or an equivalent, where it's 30 mil a year. I mean, some people are starting to get behind this whole Geno for MVP thing. I don't think he's going to win MVP. I don't think he's as good as like the Mahomes and Josh Allens, as much as we might want him to be. I don't think he is. But is he now starting to get into the area where he's close enough to where he can ask for that kind of money like Kyler Murray did? Is he? Man.
It's possible. I mean, this is the other problem with these quarterbacks not looking as good in this draft is a team could look at Geno and say, we've got the roster together. We just need the quarterback. So let's pay the money on the guy. And, he's this, he's Kirk Cousins leaving Washington a couple of years ago, where people kind of know what he is and understand that they're not getting Josh Allen. I agree with you. He's not Allen. He's not Mahomes. One of those two guys is going to win the MVP when it's all said and done. And they're going to put statistically up they'll have those stats be at either yards or touchdowns thrown that'll kind of blow Smith out of the water when it's all said and done. Though Smith, when you look at all the statistics really that you should use to evaluate a quarterback, I would say beyond just the yards and the touchdowns, like quarterback rating, QBR, average per attempt, PFF score. If you actually put all of those together, you could very, very well make that argument. But I don't think he's on those same level. He's not as the same talent as those guys. He's not being asked to do the same things in this offense those guys are, and the load that they must carry. But if it gets to that price, Brendan, and we're talking about getting the Kyler Murray money, which is $249 million on a 4-year deal, all right, 5-year deal.
Yeah. I mean, it's 50 mil a year is the bottom line. And
I
mean,
can't.
Geno can say, I am playing better this year than Kyler ever has. Where's my money? But the real question is, who in the NFL is offering Geno that kind of money? I was going to
ask that question. What's the team? I mean, Indianapolis, are they going to go back to this, once again for now a 4th straight season of trying to find they're just a quarterback away. I don't think they're at that place anymore. I don't see anybody from the NFC East that would be in that realm. Maybe the Washington Commanders in the NFC East. I said AFC East is what I meant. Nobody in the AFC East, nobody in the NFC East.
Tampa's still the team.
Tampa's still a team that makes some sense here. They do, and they will have the money freed up once Brady's off the books to then offer theoretically that type of contract. On top of with the down performance this year, they're probably going to, is Levante David going to be their long term here going forward? They've got some guys they could probably free up some money with. So there may be those teams. There may be those teams out there that are willing to jump to that mark, but I can't pull that. I can't go that high for Geno. Like, to me, it's my 30 million is where that's 50 million is 50, almost double the money at that point from where I'm comfortable at. And I'm not comfortable at 30 million. I don't like paying quarterbacks big money. I really am enamored by the thought process of trying to build the team up without having to do that. But he's playing too good, man, not to give it more consideration.
Yeah, and it's good to have options. We have options, which we did not think we were going to have. We can draft somebody. We can keep Geno. We can tag Geno. We can trade Geno. A lot of different paths we can take now, which that's the important thing.
I didn't think about that. That is I mean, if it comes down to $50 million, you're willing to pay 30. Why not just franchise him at that point, right? Isn't it? I mean, franchise is 36, 37. So if I'm willing to go to 30 anyway, but then it turns into just a 1-year deal, I mean, it's kind of cold-blooded to Geno, who's definitely earned the contract extension at that point. But I don't know. I mean, maybe that's more of the given routes. If he's going to be up at the $50 million mark, and that's where the going rate's going to be versus what the rest of the league's willing to offer, maybe that's the smarter realm to go here, is just to do the franchise and call it a day.
Yeah, the issue would be you can't backload any of the money if you tag him. It's just all there for that 1 year.
That part is true. He ends up eating then up all of the money that you would have to spend out there in free agency. But you do still then have 4 picks through 2 rounds at that point. So, and there is some other money that you could theoretically, I think, clean from this team if you wanted to go make another couple moves out there in conjunction with it. So, it would make it hard. It would make it easy. But, as the alternative being, we got to let him walk and then go take a guy in the 2nd round and hope that guy will be enough, or re-sign Drew. I guess, I think the Drew Lock aspect of this also does factor in the potential of Geno moving. They going, let's just go with Drew Lock now, trying to make that just work before. Let's redo it again.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what we're trying to say here is that it sure would be nice if Geno could start like a GS7 method program thing that right. Jody can, dump some money into.
Team G7.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they let them get away with it for over a decade, so clearly they're okay with it, right?
That's right. Exactly.
Let's see. Pretentious Cameron, thank you for the $5. Feels good to be 5-3. I went into this season with the mental mindset that we would be bad. I doubted both Pete and Geno, and I'm glad I was wrong. Yeah, and that's a point that I think should be made very clearly right now. I think a vast majority of Seahawks fans who were wrong this offseason are quite happy about it. I don't think anyone's mad about it. Not anymore, at least.
No, I think people have realized what's kind of happened here and what's what. And there was a lot of questions in our mind. And there was a lot of, Brendan, we had some of the biggest fights I think we've seen in this fan base in recent years between the Carroll and Wilson camp, between the Wilson camp, who's thought that he's being done wrong because by the team, and that all the different ways people view this and how hard it was to view, because all of us, I think, were operating on a very limited amount of information and knowledge about what was happening at hand and what was causing issues or problems in recent years and where things were going wrong, not just from the standpoint of the Russell Wilson Carroll Seahawks dynamic, but the front office dynamic and Schneider and Carroll and who had more power and who didn't, and who maybe had a little bit of that power taken away in recent times so that they could just concentrate on coaching. And look at that. Now that they get to just concentrate on coaching, maybe they're able to excel a little bit more than they have in recent years. Whatever the reasons that have brought us here, we find ourselves in solid footing, in good hands with Schneider and Carroll, I think, as we look at them now that the defense has rounded into shape. And as Brendan just said about with Geno, you've got the good problem to have. You've got options with him. If you want to bring him back, you can franchise him. You can move in a different direction. That having options is a good thing in the NFL. Having a lot of different directions you can go is a great thing, because a lot of teams get cornered into items and into positions and ways they've got to go and that's where you start making desperate trades and desperate moves rather than really just letting the process kind of play out a little bit. But it's been wonderful. And I think, Cameron, we've all to some degree on that have to eat our little bit of share of crow in the respect of didn't expect this, didn't see this coming, didn't think this was possible for what they had, / thinking we'd be bad. I mean, me and Brendan had 7 wins or something like that, I think, on our projection.
We went back and forth between like 6 and 8. We thought it was going to land somewhere in there, I think.
Yeah. So we've definitely been, we've definitely, as I said, I'm eating my crow, but I'm eating it with a big old smile. Every feather's going in with a big old grin.
Yeah, it's definitely a good thing to happen. And I also think people losing interest in this QB class has helped. People are realizing this was not the goldmine quarterback class that we thought.
Yeah.
There's maybe I think there's at this point one guy who is like the super duper star prospect. It's Stroud. After that, it's kind of a normal QB class.
And even I don't think he's on the level of a Josh Allen or a Mahomes type level prospect in what he is.
Well, were those guys great prospects? Mahomes didn't even go in the top 10.
I mean, about where they land, where they finish, where they'll project to. I don't see him projecting to, I know nobody thought necessarily with those guys they were going to be what they were, but that he's not going to get to that projectable state in his game. He doesn't have that in his game.
Yeah.
He doesn't have he has neither of theirs mobility, and both those guys have much stronger arms, better arms. He's maybe on the accuracy point, very right with them step for step, but they've got him beat in those other two realms, which to me does limit a little bit of his upside. Not saying that he won't be a good player, Brendan, or that he's not going to be a very good quarterback, and he's very young and got a lot of time still to develop, but I have worries, man. Those Ohio State quarterbacks and some of the things I'm seeing with them, I've got some big, like flashing warning signs, we'll see.
Yeah. I whenever I think about like the top quarterback prospects, I always compare them to Andrew Luck, because in my lifetime of following football really closely, he's probably the most hyped prospect ever. It was right up there with like what Peyton Manning and John Elway were.
100%.
And this draft certainly does not have an Andrew Luck level prospect.
No.
I don't even know if it has a Joe Burrow level prospect.
No, I mean, I think that's a good, you could put a comp, I think, to Stroud a little bit with Burrow, because they've got a lot of similarities to their game and what they do and how they go about their business. So that maybe is as high a projection as you get. And I know Burrow's playing as well as anybody in the sport right now. He's just insane with his anticipation, which Stroud doesn't have. Stroud has great anticipation, but Burrow's got maybe the best in the sport at just knowing when the guy's going to break out and putting it out ahead of him, putting it on before the guy gets out of the break. He's uncanny at times in that respect of things. But
yeah, the weird thing with Burrow was nobody knew who he was until his last year. Like literally came out of nowhere, was going to go undrafted, gets the starting job at LSU, then becomes the #1 overall pick. It's kind of hard for me to say historically great prospect when he only had 1 year.
No, he wasn't a historic race, and he's like Stroud. There's some limitations on the tools, which what you're talking about with Elway and Manning had some limitations. Wasn't a mobile guy, didn't have this a huge arm. Manning was so smart upstairs and what he did there that it was like having the equivalent of having the big arm mobile guy, and Elway along with that too. So just not in that respect. They're not to that level of things. Burrow was a little bit, as well as he is playing, he's still from a physical standpoint, tiny bit limited. If you're going to pick a quarterback in the top 5, Brendan, don't you? You'd ideally want to say he's unlimited in his physical potential as much as anything else.
Right. Yeah. It ended up petering out a little bit, but hey, I mean, we might end up making out okay on this. The only thing it could do is drive up Geno's asking price because less teams are going to look at the draft for their quarterback.
Agreed. I agreed. It works out better for Geno with this situation. Whereas if the quarterback class was super strong, Geno could be. It could be a difference of $10 million a season, quite frankly. That's substantial.
Right. Mumbles, thank you for the $5. Pumpkin's getting more and more desperate, Brando.
She went to the back for about 5 minutes there and just started embedding her claws in the bag trying to get my attention. She's usually pretty chill, but she's live wire tonight. She's just staring me down right now, too. She's so angry at me.
Yeah.
Her eyes are like this right now, Brendan.
I know that. I know that one.
Yeah.
Not from cats, from dogs, but I've seen it before.
Oh, they'll do it too. Yeah. Hey, give me just 2 seconds. I got to be right back. Okay. 1 second.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Let me make sure I'm caught up here. I think I got one more. And yeah, then we'll be caught up and we'll move on to the offense, people. Still got another pretty good segment of show. We've got almost 400 people in the stream right now. So I want to thank everybody for showing up and coming out. And I mean, it's been a season better than I think any of us or most of us expected so far. It's been a lot more fun than I expected. I thought that even if the team was going to be decent, then they still weren't going to, they were going to be like a low scoring, good defensive team. That hasn't necessarily been the case. So things are fun. And by the way, everyone, please like the stream if you haven't already. Liking the stream helps the channel out a lot. So if you haven't already, click the thumbs up on the stream. I sure would appreciate it. All right.
Oh, sorry about that.
Not a problem. All right. Mumbles, thank you for the $2. Another donation from Mumbles. Thank you. Tagging Geno would cost $31.5 in 2023. I'm pretty sure that's the transition tag, not the franchise tag.
Yeah, that does seem a little low on that Mumbles, which you could transition him, which is the what you get a chance to match. And if you don't match, was it? I don't think it's 2 firsts, is it? On the
no, franchise tag is 2 firsts. Transition tag is nothing.
Transition tag is nothing if you.
That's
if you don't.
what. Remember the Steve Hutchinson thing? The transition tag was why that happened. So yeah.
Yeah, so you wouldn't be able to transition. You wouldn't be able to transition tag him because the team's going to offer obviously more than the 1 year 31.5, and Geno's going to want to take that. So the transition would be out. But yeah, it's. I think I looked at the numbers, Mumbles, on this. It's up at like 37.5, 38 for the franchise. So it's the top 5 average per year quarterbacks and what they're making, and that number that comes out of those. And so with quarterbacks right now, the new Wilson deal, the Deshaun Watson deal, the Kyler Murray deal, the Josh Allen deal last sold, those are pushing that up into that point.
Okay, let me throw one theory out. Mm-hmm. It's not really working that well. The Wilson contract looks like a disaster. The Kyler Murray contract looks like a disaster. Deshaun Watson looks like the monster disaster, like a cataclysmic disaster. And I know he hasn't played yet, but that's kind of the problem. What if this offseason is the offseason where teams start to go, you know what, we're not going to do that anymore with quarterbacks?
Well, this is a big thing that I've been looking at predicting as far as the league's going to, I think, eventually transition here one way or another at some point. And that you're going to reach that point where teams look around and they go, this just isn't worth doing this anymore. We don't know if this ever really made sense. We just all decided that we would do it. And I think that's going to get to that spot. Yeah, let me add another one to that list, by the way, which would be Aaron Rodgers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Obviously, the Packers aren't, loving that deal. I don't think that the Cowboys like the Dak Prescott deal. You've got Jerry Jones the second. Dak went down to an injury, was openly flirting with the fact of what would be so bad if we had ourselves a the quarterback controversy here. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. So, buyer's remorse is going on, I think, a little bit big time across the sport. And
wow,
my cats are just on fire right now.
that's awesome.
It's going on. Yeah, she's like she's pissed. So it is gonna reach that spot here sooner or later. And let me replug my deal back in here. 1 second.
No problem. Yeah, I saw someone in chat bring up the Derek Carr contract. That's another pretty good example. Like, okay, what big quarterback contracts right now are actually working? You have a Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes. Is that it? That's kind of what I'm thinking right now. I'm going to ask Brandon when he gets back.
Well, she broke it. So,
boy.
God, cats love animals.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
What I was just saying was the only two monster QB contracts in the league right now that look good are Josh Allen and Mahomes, right?
I'd say that's pretty much it. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's somebody else. Yeah, there's not another deal out there I can think of that.
I mean, Stafford looks really bad too. That's another one, but because his arm's going to fall off.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't look good. You backload a lot of that deal, Brendan, to make it happen this year for them on trying to go for it now. So, this is, I think, a smart team would look into it and be held back to doing it. It does beg the eye, but so you got Kyler Murray signs I think it's 5 years, $249 million. But if you can get Geno at 4 years, 120 or 4 years, 140, does those teams
that's
go,
the old Wilson contract?
Yeah, but teams go, well, look, we're not spending those deals you just mentioned. We're not hitting those in commensurate rate to what those deals are. We're going 65%, 70% of those contracts. So that's the smarter way to go, as opposed to whole hog just going, let's keep the quarterback position as cheap as possible. And that's where I think teams will really start to move towards. But I don't think it's going to quite get to that spot there yet for Geno, because he might be more of the mid-tier guy that's hasn't been existing in football recently, who can do that stuff.
Yeah, I have said before, his reputation may cost him money. To some people, he will never be anything other than the guy who got his jaw broken in training camp and got kicked out of New York after 2 seasons and bounced around the league for almost a decade. I don't know if he can completely undo that reputation with one good season.
I agree with you on that. And also, let's face it, maybe teams are looking at what Carroll did with Russell Wilson, and they're like, well, maybe, Carroll's got a little secret sauce here with the quarterbacks too. Like, we don't want to get Russell Wilsoned, They're also thinking that, and that could play into this a little bit as well. It will come down to, Brendan, a little bit just like this trade market and trade deadline situation that broke down. And that's, what is there out there as far as needs go? How many teams are truly looking for a quarterback? And then how many teams who are looking for a quarterback are right now in kind of a win now mode? I think that's what Geno's going to have to be fit with. I don't think that there's going to be a team that's at the beginning of a rebuild that's going to want to go out there and sign him. And there is going to be, I think, a small amount of teams, not a lot, but if you have 3 teams, Brendan, that are in the mode of, we're willing to give him a good contract, we think we're going to get below that top of the market money and significantly so, that would be enough to maybe, push it and make it hard for our Seahawks at that point.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're the team that gave Geno a chance. Maybe he'll be motivated somewhat to stay here, even if he can't get 100% of the money. But generally speaking, players do not take discounts just to stay somewhere. So I'm not expecting that to be the saving grace this offseason.
I'm not either. It would be great if that was the case. You'd love to see Geno go, well, this is who you put your trust and faith in me. And so I'm going to put my trust and faith back into you. And I want to stay here, and I love this place. I'll do this for $25 million a year. That would be great to have that breakdown like that. And hopefully, but that does feel a little pie in the sky for a guy that, again, hasn't yet gotten that one big contract yet. Completely can understand that him going out there and trying to maximize this opportunity at this point.
All right. Leland Kimball, thank you for the $10. Shoop to whoop. I'm so glad y'all have an exciting season to report on. Both of you produce such good content. I'm totally here for it. Go Hawks. Well, thank you, Leland.
Thank you, Leland. That's very kind of you to say, man. And
Yeah.
it's been one of the funner years and doing this for 4 years, Brendan. I'd love to hear where you're at on this too. This has been one of the funnest years of covering the team so far that I've gotten the opportunity to do. For the last couple of
Yeah.
years where it's been painful at times in trying to cover the team with what's been happening.
Yeah, this is probably the most fun I've had on YouTube yet. Not just because of the team, but also because the stuff happening with the channel where we hit 10,000 subs.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw, but I finally got a channel logo done, so things actually look a little more professional.
There we go. It's about time, Brendan. I haven't seen it yet. No, I got to go check it out. What did you do?
Yeah. Basically, it's just like a full-bodied Seahawk.
Okay.
I got a guy to put it together. It's a full-body Seahawk. Is basically the best way to sum it up. It looks a little like the Eagles logo, but not quite.
Okay.
Not quite there. It's pretty nice. I saw yours. It had like the old logo, and I
Mhm.
was kind of looking at it, wondering, am I gonna like how much do you have to alter it so you don't run afoul of the wrong people?
Oh,
But
I know. Yeah, they
yeah,
don't. Well, it's why I can't sell my I don't sell my jackets for that reason because I think it is a little bit still too close to be sold. Like I can make it on my own, and I can give them away for free, but
right.
can't sell because definitely that will fit into the licensing issues. I got to do
And
that long term.
yeah,
Try to
what you
figure.
do is you package a napkin in with the shirt, and then you say you're selling the napkin for
There you go.
$80, and the shirt is just a free throw-in.
There you go. Hey man, that's actually pretty brilliant.
Yeah.
I might have to employ that.
Hmm. But yeah, thank you, Leland. Frank Darcy, thank you for the $20. I don't see a message here, but
Oh
thank
yeah,
you, Frank
Frank.
Darcy, for your support.
Let's go, Frank. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I think at this point we can turn the page a little bit to the offense, which I mean, Geno in this game, he's kind of got everything working against him. His starting receivers are playing hobbled. They only play like 2/3 of the snaps because of the fact that they're hurt. The Giants defense is playing great. Can't run on them. Walker can't find any real holes. Seems like the interior of the offensive line is getting pushed around. Lockett's having the game from hell. Goodwin drops a touchdown after his big game last week. So everything's kind of going against him, but he just kind of keeps grinding in there, keeps hanging around, keeps doing his job, and eventually in that fourth quarter, things break open a little bit for him. It's a great testament to his ability to not let one or two things let the game get away from him.
I think well, I'm having a trial of errors here today. My God.
We all have those days.
Oh my gosh. Hold on. Sorry, Brendan. Jesus. I don't know why everything today is going like this, but it is.
Wow.
Yeah, this is great. Sorry, dude.
No problem.
I'm gonna let it hang here. We'll just ride with us to the end. My God. Yes. So the offense was great. Geno's been unflappable throughout the whole course of this year so far. There's no doubt about that. He has been locked in and loaded. He's been prepared. He's been ready to go. He's not at any point looked in over his head or confused or not understanding what the plan of attack is or what he's got to do. And that was exactly what you saw again here today. As you said, there were so many things kind of working against him a little bit. The drops that occurred across the board, where you're just going, come on. I think Tyler Lockett might have had one of his worst games as a Seahawk, if not his worst game as a Hawk, even though he did make the catch and he made back up for it. But he certainly had one of those days too, where you go, okay, here we go. Like, come on, let's help this guy out. I mean, he had the fumble by Lockett too, down there at the goal line. But this is why we're talking about being open to giving him this extension, Brendan, is because of the fact that he is playing that good. He is so locked in and in control, and you can't throw him off. You can't get him, freaking out. He is just stays right on the path. Play goes bad, moves right on to that next play. That 5-for-5 drive coming after he'd had those drops across the board and just put those balls right on the right spot. That Goodwin throw, Brendan, on the crossing route, it's right there for Goodwin. The defender's not on Goodwin. It's a pure and simple drop. There's a throw to DK Metcalf where it's not Metcalf's fault. There's a guy grabbing his arm, pulling the arm back, but still the ball is put right there on the money. There's the Tyler Lockett throw, dropping it into the bucket in the back of the end zone where Tyler Lockett, every time he's made that catch, he drags his foot. He does it without even having to think about it. Doesn't even try to drag his foot. Only gets the 1 foot and bounce on the play. All those throws didn't miss a beat, didn't let it hold him back. He was in complete control. And here's the other thing that I think is really important about this game in particular, Brendan, is that you have Wink Martindale coming into this game, and that's going to be a guy that's going to challenge quarterbacks as much as anything. He is going to make you be on point in your reads, and he's going to test you on those reads, and he's going to throw everything but the kitchen sink at you, and then maybe that too. And I think he threw that at Geno, and Geno handled it. Geno stayed into his reads. And again, you didn't see him confused, which with Wink Martin defense, you can see a lot of times in certain weeks, quarterbacks get completely avalanched where they just don't know where it's coming from. They're thinking it's going to be here, but it's there. They think it's over here, but it's here. And they just can't quite get their footing solidly placed. And he didn't have that happen here against this team and this defense. And it was impressive. It was really impressive.
Yeah, I think Sunday was the first time this year where you saw Geno get blindsided by that blitz, that one third down play where the cornerback just came not from his blind side, but his front side. Geno didn't see him. I think that might have been Travis Homer's fault, but I'm not sure.
It was. No, you're right. You're 100%. Homer went to the left. He's supposed to go to the right on that.
Right. First game back for Homer, so there's going to be some trials and tribulations.
Yeah.
But like when we go back to the preseason, looking at that Bears game that we played in week 2, where everybody turned on Geno, the idea behind why people were turning on Geno was not so much the raw performance, because there were like 5 or 6 drops in that game from Geno Smith passes. But the real issue that people had with what Geno did in that game, it seemed like, one bad thing would happen and then everything was just over. He would trip on DJ Dallas's foot when he's coming out of his play action, fall down, and that would just kill the drive. Or, basically the idea was he wasn't really being a leader. And that has completely flipped from that game when everybody was like, oh, this guy isn't it. Look at what he's doing. So that's been encouraging.
Yeah, he has. You're right about that. I mean, last year there was at times too where you saw in those games he played against the Saints and the Steelers where he just got frustrated, couldn't quite get right, to your point on that, just wasn't looking as in control as he is this year. He looks like a guy who this offseason said, you're going to get your chance. You're going to be able to put an opportunity to have this starting job. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to have the best offseason of your life? Guys say that all the time, Brendan, right? Guys say it all the time. Oh, I mean, he had the offseason life. He's in the best shape of his life. But the truly in there and doing it. And every day I heard somebody mention, and I think it was Mark Sanchez mentioned on the telecast, or somebody was, or he was on with talking with somebody. He's talking about it's the lonely work you put in. It was Dilfer I was listening talking about with Geno. It's that you go in and you just go put that lonely work in. And Dilfer was referencing it in regards to actually Matt Hasselbeck. And Hasselbeck came in and he was supposed to be the guy, right? You traded for, but he had a real rough start in Seattle when he began things. Dilfer took over for him. Dilfer got the contract extension. Matt didn't just fall into his feelings. Matt didn't just go into a shell of himself. He went in there and worked, which was Dilfer's point. The words he referenced, he did the lonely work, the work of I'm not on Instagram. There ain't people seeing me do this. It's just the hard grind day in and day out to make myself a better quarterback. And I'm going to come out the other side of this as a much better quarterback, but I got to put the work in, and there's no way to shortcut it. There's no way to just find the sidestep to it. And he's done that work. That's why he looks so in control. That's why he's putting consistent performance after consistent performance together. That's why he's not overwhelmed, Brendan. He's not losing himself. He's not having questions about his leadership, because when you've done your homework, when you've taken care of everything in the background, the rest becomes kind of somewhat simple. You've done the heavy lifting. It's that a lot of times when we see those guys fail, it's because they haven't always done all of that work and all of what they need to do to be put in a position to succeed.
Yeah, and even like less than a year ago, you had the DUI, and a lot of people, I think, read to that as to say, "Oh, this guy's not taking this seriously." I mean, this offseason might be his chance. It might be his chance to get another shot in the NFL, and as soon as the offseason starts, he's getting a DUI. Like, I think a lot of people read into that this guy hasn't changed, but he really has.
He has indeed. And I was one of those people that definitely was going, okay, what's going on here with the DUI? You get your opportunity and now this is going to happen. Like what's going on here, Geno? That was horrible timing on his part, and probably a big part of why Brendan, he had so many people completely off on him by the start of the year, where it was all about Drew Lock for a large part of the fan base. But we can't just take that one moment in that one situation and say that's where he was at, because you see so much on the other side of it. He's not out there just partying his butt off and playing this well. to get to playing this well, I've been in the film room. I've worked on all those aspects of my game that are somewhat of a weakness even. And if not turned them into a strength, at least used them into something that people can't, force me into a box to fail on. I can still find success within that.
DVN, thank you for the $1.99, and I think he meant to super chat this comment. You also see Geno coaching Lockett on the side after the fumble and the drop. Great leadership from Geno. Yeah, I mean, the game is still going on. He's still your teammate. You got to do stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, like somebody needs to tell Aaron Rodgers. Sometimes you need to be a little more tolerant of failure from your teammates. So, yeah.
And it wasn't just that. It was that moment with Lockett, which was big and great to go over for him to do that with Tyler. I thought that was a moment. It was also the Eskridge moment. There's a time in this game, Brendan, where it's the first drive of the game. Giants are showing one of those Wink Martindale blitzes. Geno Smith sees it coming. He goes to his head and he does a head look, which all the receivers are supposed to do. And I have a theory on what it is when they do, which is that it's cut your route off a little bit shorter. Don't go as much depth because we've got a blitz. I've got to be able to get the ball out to you. Eskridge ended up running the play at full depth to the sticks. And then you saw later on Geno on the sideline with Eskridge talking him through what that meant, why he wanted him to do what he did. I think that's what it looked like to me because it came right on the heels of it. So he's doing it with other players as well. And again, it's not on an Instagram or to show all the people what a great leader he is. It's just being a great leader in the way that it's going to then help the team and help the betterment of the team. And that it's stuff that's true leadership there. That's what it looks like. It's in those moments where it's a little bit hard, where I'm having a tough conversation with Eskridge in a moment like that. Not just encouragement, but in like, here's how I need you to do this. Here's why we do this. And that's what that conversation looked like. And as much as the Lockett one, which was great, that was great. But it was the Eskridge one to me that really jumped out where I go, see, that's again, the guy just so locked in right now, Brendan. He's on every detail right now. Nothing's slipping through his fingers.
Right. And it's great to see. Let's see here. Why, dude? Why? Thank you for the $5. It's simple. Super Bowl contenders with Geno, 3-year window with rookie little chance. This is a no-brainer for me. Geno wants 30 to 35 AAV. That sucks. Pay him. Well, are you automatic Super Bowl contenders with Geno in a 3-year window? I'm not convinced of that prior being something that we can just take for granted. Like, he is playing well, but I don't know if his presence alone, he's not a Josh Allen type quarterback who can single-handedly make you great, or, the way Wilson seemed to single-handedly make us great for a couple years there. So I don't know if I'm looking at it quite as binary as this, but I will say at the end of the day, you don't want to lose something really valuable over a couple $1,000,000.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to have Geno go out the door because I said I don't want to go 4 million higher or 5 million higher. That would definitely be tough. I agree with you, Brendan. I don't think that just signing Geno makes you a no-brainer Super Bowl contender. And maybe that is something that should inform you on this, is if him signing him, you're going to be in a position the next 2 years with him at quarterback to get there. Maybe you can. You do have a little more drafting that needs to be done and done right. You do have some money that you need to spend and spend right to get to that spot where I think you could say no-brainer. It's getting costly at 35. It really is at that point, and that's going to be a tough spot. But is that $5 million enough difference to hit me? I mean, really, Brendan, at the end of the day, that $35 million, if we're talking about an equivalency to the Russell at $35 million 2 years ago, is actually bet like $25 million if we're going, apples for apples on that one, right? Like it's going to be this is where you always got to update the inflation of the dollar with the salary cap and how much it rises in the NFL. So I would, I guess I would at the end of the day, maybe push up that mark, but boy, 30 is really where I want to try to hold this in at. And it better be because other teams are really like competing for him if I'm going to start pushing up that mark, not just simply I'm, competing against no one and going to pay him that before we even get to free agency, for instance.
Yeah. I won't be too upset if we do it. I guess here's the thing. Are you going to do like a 4-year deal that commits you to him for 3 years, and then that 4th year he's gone because by that point, and he doesn't see a good chunk of that money? That's usually how this stuff works. So maybe he gets a deal that is $35 million a year, but he only ends up seeing 3 years and I don't know, like 100 million of it, possibly.
Would you want to do a 4-year deal with him at like, at like 30 million, or would you want to do a 3-year deal at 35 if you had to make a choice on that?
Probably the 4 year because it's really only a 3 year deal anyway. We all know the last year is not going to have massive guarantees in it, right?
Yeah, that's true. I guess that is true. That is true. Yeah, I guess you could do that does make sense on that. I guess I'd probably lean on that too. If you're going to sign him, just go the 4 years. Because what I want to do on that deal, Brendan, is if I sign him to a contract extension like that, I do want to make sure that I can kind of move the first couple of years of the money around, right? If I've got to be pressed up into 30, 35, I'd love to get the first year down at like 16, 17, all
Yeah.
bonus. And then the second year of it up to like 24. So again, by the time we actually get to the spot where it starts to get, okay, year 3, it's at 39, 40. Well, the cap's also at 260 million, hopefully by that point, or something in that neighborhood,
Right.
250 or whatever.
Yeah. Some people are starting to get a little concerned because we don't have a lot of players under contract next year, and there's only a limited amount of cap space to fill the roster out. So people are concerned that if we give Geno a ton of money, it will be hard to fill out the roster because you're also going to have to give maybe a top 10 pick some amount of money. And by the time you get to the end of the draft, you might only have like 45 players under contract and be out of money. Some people are a little worried.
It's a valid concern to a degree, but let's also remember that the Seahawks have not signed a lot of bad contracts in recent years, and they've given themselves a lot of flexibility. And so, yeah, you've given certain guys like Brian Monet or Quandre Diggs or Jamal Adams or Quentin Jefferson, we can go down the list. There's probably about 8 or 9 contracts here that you could kind of peel out from that may have some dead money, but you can still get some savings on if you needed to do that on the other end of things. So it is true that signing with that big deal would hamper you a little bit. But if you're in a go forward mode, which now they firmly go from being that team in a rebuilding state to more of a now go for a mode kind of situation, then you are willing a little bit more at that point to move money around and to get a little bit more creative in your process to the future. Not to mention you can have guys on a current deal like a Lockett move money down that way, or DK as well. We've done none of that right now in the future is my point. You're right now at a 0 point, 0 basic dead money, 0. We've moved all this RAM-like guaranteed dollar 4 years out situation. You're operating really from a point of we can get creative if we need to, as opposed to we're the New Orleans Saints and we're 50 million over the cap and there is no creativity to employ. We got to employ creativity just to get underneath the cap. Say nothing of trying to go out there and be aggressive in the moves we make. So it is something to be concerned with, but it's not going to be an inhibitor in every respect. There could be other ways to still be able to add onto that team. Again, the key being too, if it's a team that's in a go for it mode of, hey, we're not in a rebuild or ascent. We're an elite status team now, and we're gonna act like one.
Yeah. All right. That all sounds pretty agreeable to me. That makes sense. Garth Knight, thank you for the $5. Brendan, I want to apologize for all the sexist things I've said on Brandon's channel. I respect women's football opinions. Warren Moon and I concede. Well, they do call it the 12th man, right? 12th man.
That's true. I mean, I'm sorry. It's just that's what they retired. They didn't say the 12-man woman. So,
or the 12th person or the 12th individual. No, it's the 12th man.
Yeah. I appreciate the apology, Garth, but you don't have to apologize for anything, man. I know you're always just coming from a humor standpoint. So you're just trying to make people laugh, man. And people are very sensitive in this day and age at times. So
yeah. Not everything you do is going to land, but that doesn't mean you stop trying.
No, you still got to let it go. And Garth's got some funny one-liners every once in a while that keeps me going, especially when I'm on some of those long streams.
Yeah, thank you for the $2. I hope Geno hires Mark Rogers as his agent.
Case in point.
Honestly, from a player's perspective, he is really good at his job. I'm surprised he doesn't have more clients. Do players just not want to have a toxic person like that representing them with the team? Maybe.
I think he has done right by Wilson, certainly. You can't argue that, and maybe that will be the case. I've wondered too. I've always thought Brendan, part of the reason he's done what he's done is in being as aggressive as he is with Wilson is yes, to get Wilson the most money, but to also show those people out there, look at how much money I'll get you too. Look at how aggressive I will be. I'll act like a baseball agent, not like a football agent. And that's I don't know, but he's not gotten it. I do tend to think this as well. I think there's other general managers in this league that after Schneider's experience with him, and we know Schneider hates Mark Rogers to the depths of his soul. We know he does. I think after that experience, there'll be other general managers in the league going, if you hire that guy, we're not going to be as much on one to talk with him. With
Yeah.
Wilson, you have to come to the table because it's Wilson, and he had value up until at least up to last year as far as that goes. But I don't think everybody's Wilson, and I think there's a guy like that might be as difficult as he is. It might be enough for certain teams to go, nah, I don't want to really go that. We'll go a different route.
Right. How many other players does he represent besides Wilson?
One.
Even?
Oh, he's got baseball. He's got a pretty big list of baseball.
No. I know he's a baseball guy, but NFL guys.
NFL guys just Wilson.
Wow, really?
Mm-hmm.
That really kind of makes everything make more sense with what happened with Schneider and that whole relationship.
Yeah, it's a problem because he's operating off of a baseball mentality that he's trying to apply to football in the contract negotiations, the insistence upon guaranteeing the contract, the insistence upon trying to get the 20% of the salary cap, which was where reportedly the negotiations last time began at. He had a little bit of the scorched earth process to it. And in baseball, you can get away with that with the guaranteed deals and how much money flows in every different direction in that type of sport. Football is a little bit of a different tale of it. And then you add into it as well. Like he's all the off the field stuff done with Wilson and the feeding the media stuff. Like, let's also understand that too. Agents do that as well. Rodgers plays that game as much as anybody does, along with Wilson. And that's also going to spurn some general managers out there to go, I don't really want to deal. This guy's going to be stabbing me in the back to various media sources when it doesn't go his way, which you very quickly could come to that standpoint with the way that Wilson went last year with some of that releasing of the 4 teams. I don't think that did him any favors as far as the viewpoint around the league, but from a player standpoint, you would think they would view that a little more favorably to say, hey, I want in on that. I want somebody who's going to, fight like that for me.
Yeah, that makes that the one player in the entire league that he represents. That's kind of like I said, a lot of things start to make sense when you think about it like that. But other than that, this offense, were you scared on Sunday when Metcalf had to go play? I was scared.
Yeah, because I think that I don't want to do something that's long-term, especially patella injuries. That's the one that got Jimmy Graham when he went down and how that robbed him on that major injury. He was not as fast or as quick as he once was when it fully tore. If this thing's like partially, I don't know what it is when you injure your patella, it seems like something's partially nicked at that point. I don't think you just bruise a tendon, right? Like if the tendon's hurt, it's maybe had a little bit of something happen to it. He's kind of unique in that respect, and that he's not yet missed an NFL game. You remember there was a game a couple years ago against the Eagles where he went up for a catch and his knee went like that on the landing, and it went like, like here's the knee, he goes, and it was like he bounced right back up and he was right back out there, and he's kind of maybe a little unique with that. Because with those bigger bodied receivers, you get the Julio Jones thing going on sometimes, which is they just get beat up because those guys pull them down awkwardly to the ground because they're smaller guys, those cornerbacks trying to tackle them. So yeah, I was a little bit concerned with it. He wanted to play. Coaching staff was let him play. I'm going to trust the medical doctors. It's okay. But if he goes down to some major injury like a patella tear at this point or a torn ACL, I will be mightily mad about it, Brendan, because I think that this is a guy that's here for the long term for us and part of the big long term plans. I'd love to have him out for this year and have him continue to go out there and be a force like he is, I think. But at the same point in time, he's a young guy. I don't want to. You're not in that go for moment necessarily right now at this season right now. I'll trust where they're at. I don't think they would put him out there to risk it, but I feel like they've done that before, though, in the same respect, right? Like you took Sherman out there when he was having the Achilles stuff going on. It was sore, and you still ran him out there, and then it fully tore. So you have had a past of being willing to kind of put guys out there if they're so like, I can go, coach. And that's where it's like, no, save the player from himself. We're going to give you a couple of weeks on this. It will be fine at the receiver position. We can make do for this time period. That's the whole point of drafting Eskridge is you're supposed to have somebody there that can be viably there to fill in for Metcalf or Lockett if they go down. So I probably lean more into that direction of things.
Yeah. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel good. I was really happy we made it out of that game with no further damage to either player. I think Lockett got hurt on Thursday or Friday in practice because it was hamstring all week, and then at the end it was listed hamstring and ribs.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he's a little bit beaten up. Maybe that was a little bit of an explanation too for why he struggled a little bit in this game. It's hard when you've got a couple injuries you're fighting through to kind of find yourself a little bit. So that's maybe a little more explainable. But yeah, if you've got to rest one of these guys for a week or two, I support doing it. It's a 17-game season, Brendan. We got to stop looking at through the lens of these guys got to play every game of the year. Instead, I think it's more looking at get me 14, 15 games in a season, and I'll find you a couple rest periods in there as well. I think that's not the worst of approaches to always take. As these guys are going to get wore down much quicker in their careers with that extra game, and through the course of the season being extra long. I think there's got to be a little bit of a built-in strategical process there in how you view it.
Right. I mean, we might not win this game without Metcalf and Lockett, though. So I guess at the end of the day, you have to be somewhat happy they played.
I am. They did their job with what you need them to do. And you're right. I mean, Eskridge was one of your lowest rated players by PFF once again. He's always there, by the way, Brendan. Even when he plays, he's always at the lowest end for them. They don't like anything.
You would think PFF would like him because he's such a good blocker. That would show up a little bit more.
He can't run routes. So that's one of the big things with PFF as a receiver, right? Is that the majority of times as a receiver and what you're being graded on, you're not going to have the ball thrown your way. So it's got to be about you generating separation in your route running. And as you saw in that third down that I was talking about with Geno, where he goes to his head pre-snap, which is the indicator to the guys to cut off, Eskridge runs the route, still doesn't get any separation. Cornerback easily knocks the ball away. And that's because Eskridge is not a naturally good route runner. And that's something I called on the night he was drafted. It's just, this is the tough part about him, Brendan. He's a receiver who he's injury prone with questionable hands, and he can't run very good routes. But other than that, I mean, the guy's phenomenal. That's the issue there. That's why I didn't like the pick on the night. That's why we continue to be disappointed by what we're seeing out of him, because it's like, come on, man.
I'm really sick of seeing Creed Humphrey's name in my comments. I'm really sick of seeing it after every game that Eskridge plays. Every time I go to my comments and I'm like, I really am sick of hearing this guy's name. I would really like it if I could just never hear his name again.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, especially as you see the center position continue to be a bit of an albatross on this team for us at times, one way or another.
Yeah, because I mean, I'll admit it. At draft time, I was not a big Creed Humphrey guy because I didn't think he fit our system at all. But the way things have gone, regardless of that point, he certainly would have been more valuable than this.
Yeah, I feel like when you have a player that good, you find a way to work around it. The scheme, lack of scheme fit limitations type of stuff. Like, he's that good. Work with it. Find a way to make it work.
Yeah. Eskridge is such a good blocker. Should we play him at center? Maybe that's
maybe that's the way. Maybe he needs to fill in for Blythe here with his little knee injury, so he can go in there. Maybe so.
Mm-hmm. The tight ends did what they usually do. They all got involved a little bit. They all played fairly well. The one thing that kind of stuck in my craw offensively seemed like the interior offensive line got beat up a little bit. And yet, at the end of the day, I look at the PFF grade, and they loved what Gabe Jackson did. So what did you see there?
They didn't generate a lot of holes in the running game. I do think some of this is the San Diego approach, which the Giants sort of copied a bit, which was the dedication to an eighth man in the box. When you have a guy like, of course, Wink Martindale, who wants to already run a lot of stack fronts at you and exotic blitzes, and then you give him an impetus to then bring that extra man down in the box, he's going to want to do so. So yeah, they struggled in creating rushing lanes, but I would argue that if you have a defense consistently running an 8-man box, you need to be then beating that defense consistently through other means than running the ball. I just don't think you're going to have a lot of success with that at the end of the day. So that's understandable why they kind of failed with that a little bit. They were very good in pass protection. Geno was kept, I thought, very clean considering the number of the pressure looks that you were going to be given throughout the course of this game. I thought they held up pretty well in that respect. I don't think they were, world beaters or anything, but they were fine. And holding up in pass protection as we have is a big part, because if you have a team now running the 8-man boxes, right, and it becomes on Geno to throw the ball like he has this year at like the 55-60% clip in the football game, well, then you need to keep him clean, because he's going to have a lot of dropbacks back there where he's got to be slinging it. And so it does like you can't maybe generate more consistent holes in this game, or like the Chargers game where it was more of a boom or bust situation with Kenneth Walker. I think it's explainable. And the good news is that when you've been pushed into that role, and Geno's been pushed into this role now a couple times this year, Brendan, where it's just teams said, we're not going to let you run the ball. We're not letting it happen. He's then been able to beat them as a counterpunch to that. And that's again, just one of the reasons why we're very high on him, is it's not just him out there being a game manager, doing nothing or doing just the bare minimum, or it's like 49ers with the Garoppolo, where it's just, how can we How can we have him not make the mistake? How can we keep him from making the mistake? It's him carrying the day, Brendan. It's him putting at times having the team offensively on his shoulders and it being kind of on him. And he's pulling it off. He's making it happen.
Right. I don't know. It just seemed to me that there were long stretches of this game. Throughout most of this game, we couldn't run the ball because of the 8 in the box, but it didn't seem like receivers were getting open. Maybe it was just because they were playing injured. But for the most part, I kind of felt like the Giants defense was just playing really well.
Mm-hmm.
But there was also part of me that was looking at the interior offensive line and thinking we're getting beat up a little bit in there right now.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, you put up 27 points and you had 3 or 4 huge drops in this game, which would change the whole nature of it. You'd be at 35, 40 points, if a couple of those guys make those catches. Man, my cat today. Jesus. So, that's to me, I look at it and I go, you put 27 points up. Giants defense played well early on. It was kind of a defensive battle, but you rounded into shape as the game went along. If Goodwin catches that ball in the back of the end zone, you're at 35 points to the game. And it's like, well, you love what the offense did. So I can't kind of really pick at that very much myself. I go with that and I say the end results at the end of the day is that you were consistently churning out drives. You were moving the chains. There were very few 3 and outs. You were putting points up on the board. We were getting touchdowns inside the red zone when we were down in there. I think I look at that offensively and I go, that's perfectly fine with that. I think it's as much as anything, Brendan, it's because they've been so explosive and they put up so many points up into this point leading into this game that you look at 27 points now and you go, but was there more left on the table? And I think it's natural to do so because of how good they've been. But I think at the end of the day, 27 points should win you football games in the National Football League. You score 27, you should win.
Yeah. Yeah, I can mostly get behind that, especially this year when it feels like defense is on the rise a little bit. We're seeing more defense than we did like last year, especially the year before, but even last year.
Yeah, I agree with that. It seems like they've come a little bit along against the offenses so far this year.
Now, that being said, one of the reasons why we scored 27 was special teams. We dominated the special teams battle just by showing up, basically.
Mm-hmm.
We made our kicks. The punting was good, and we got a couple of fumbles from Richie James. So that was obviously a big part of what happened there. It was, what was it? Will Dissly forced one, recovered by Joey Blunt.
Mm-hmm.
And the other was,
Travis Homer.
Yeah. So, I mean, the special teams on this team has been a little bit of an odyssey this year. So it's nice to see us win a game partially because of special teams.
Agreed. I mean, that's what you're trying to build as your team philosophy is to have all 3 parts working together and that you're not having 2 parts overcome the one, as some teams often do when they look at their special teams units. Why you're spending the money you're spending on Myers. It's why you put a 4th round pick on Dickinson. It's why you have certain guys on the roster that you keep like Joey Blunt, who's I think in a lot of respects kept on the roster over Marquise Blair because of his impact from a special team standpoint. So it's not by happenstance or luck that you potentially are good there. And it has sucked this year at times seeing the special teams unit kind of fail you at moments when they have been such a stable force for you over the past. But if this team is to get anywhere this year, if we have any hope of winning a division, much less making any kind of noise in the playoffs, the special teams unit has to be a true strength of this team all the way around, not partially, not halfway, but all the way around. The good news is that Jason Myers back into Pro Bowl form. Dickinson, when he can get the punts off, has been great. And then you're obviously defending now very well against punt returns and kick returns, as well as you're okay on the other side of it. So as far as returning the ball goes, so that's coming together. Good to see, Brendan. They were as much as anything the reason you won this game. To your point on that was those 2 turnovers is why you came out of this win. Certainly why you came out of this win so easily. So why you were kind of running away at the end of the 4th quarter there. But good to see, and let's hope they can maintain it, as well as Travis Homer causing that fumble. He's a welcome. He's like that guy, like Nick Valor is, where it's that those guys are they're very helpful for what they bring when you get the full assembly of them out there running on the special teams unit.
Yeah, Carroll actually said after this game that they redid the way they wanted their players to tackle to create more fumbles, and they have 14 forced fumbles so far this year after having 9 last season. So something worked.
It did. Homer came in too. I mean, that was a Peanut Tillman punch that he came in to cause that fumble. So it was one that was not just him coming in to try to lay a heavy hit, but he was seeking out to try to knock that ball free. And when it comes, of course, with Kobe Bryant this year and the fumbles he's caused, that's absolutely been purposeful on his part. And
Oh
and
yeah.
he's trying to knock that ball free. So it's great to see that they're bringing that back into the fold, Brendan. Getting turnovers, especially fumbles in recent years, has been an ever dipping stat for them in the last couple of seasons.
Right. Mumbles, thank you for the $2. You say Creed Humphrey, I say Russell Wilson. Yeah, a lot of the bad memories of recent draft and trade decisions are going away right now because I don't know, maybe we just needed the clean slate, but things have been so different lately.
They have. And, would have been great to have Creed. We missed on that. Hopefully they do come back and address the center position here when they do get an opportunity. And again, the good news coming off this draft that you had is if you can apply the same principles you applied to this draft to get the success, which do look like different principles than what they've done in recent years, then that means there's a good chance we can come back to that same kind of success once again with this draft coming up, especially with the 4 picks in the 2 rounds. We got a couple of 5th round picks as well. So you got a lot of damage there. You can go out there and do in this draft if you can hit it out the park once again. But no doubt about it. You had a few years there of bad drafts, and that's for sure. We're trying to turn this around.
Yeah. Is the only bad, and not even that bad, but bad decision we've made since the Wilson trade, the Quandre Diggs extension? Uchenna's worked out great. Disley's contract is fine with the way he's playing.
I would bring up 2 signings that I have a little bit of an issue with. Brian Monet and Quinn Jefferson.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I think Monet can be released this offseason and you pay him like $1 million. It's super dirt cheap to get out of it. But he barely plays, so I got to believe that's the route we're going to take with that.
I just look at it, the combination of the money you spend on both those guys, and both of them you signed to a contract this offseason. Take the totality of that money, and could you not have had a better player here? And if you just put the money down for the better player at that point, it kind of felt like a deals that they just kind of gave out for the sake of giving out at the time. And to me, they just haven't been proven out in retrospect to be anything but that. Quinn Jefferson has been one of your worst rated players by PFF on that defensive line every single week.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not been a good signing. Not substantial money, but again, I don't, this theory behind the free agency of rather than go get the big signing or a couple big signings, we'll just do a bunch of these smaller little tiny signings all across the board. Okay. But I mean, like Uchenna, you gave fairly decent money to, and you were getting a good player back from it. You didn't just go to Uchenna and go, here's some bargain basement price for you, Uchenna. Is he much cheaper than a Chandler Jones? Yes. But at the end of the day, that was, you gave him good money to bring him in. You got to pay the piper to get the talent in here. And you can't just expect to always go to the low end shelf. Remember, they did this a couple of years ago too, with the Bruce Irvin, Benson Mayowa. Let's bring Jaron Reed back in here. Let's go get BJ Finney. Let's go get Greg Olson. You kind of just little here, little there, little here, little there, and none of them really amounting to a whole hell of a lot.
Yeah, but even the Quandre Diggs thing, it's not that bad. He's still playing fine. He's just not making a huge impact. But over the last, not quite year, but coming up on a year now, the team has mostly done the right thing. And the wrong things they've done, like the Monet thing, is not that big of a deal. The Quentin Jefferson thing is not that big of a deal. You can wipe that out this offseason. Barely has any impact. But I was shocked when Disley earned that contract, but he's been at least very close to worth that contract so far this year.
He's been, I think, worth every bit of it and more. He's a complete tight end. He gives you a run blocking, pass blocking, catching. He even gives you a little bit of run after the catch as far as a tight end goes. I might also, and I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy here, but I might also put the Noah Fant 5th-year option in there as well. And
maybe it's still not that much money.
It's not, but he's certainly a guy that to me has failed to impress so far early on this year. He's had a catch or two here and there, but it's been a lot of like 3-yard routes. I can't break a tackle. I'm not getting much separation. I'm not a contested catcher. There's some things with him that to me, for being as limited as that, to be spending next year $9 million for that is one where I'd go, you guys didn't, I know you had to make the choice on the 5th-year option with that, but that's kind of high-end rates for tight ends at that point to me a little bit. Especially a guy like Cap. Come on. especially for a guy who's got some questions to his game,
Right. So I think that's really about all you can say about this game. It was a good game. The team took care of business, kind of. Yeah, well, it didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. I thought both teams were going to be able to run the ball. Neither team could run the ball at all.
Yeah, no, I didn't expect it to get shut down like that. I thought it was going to be more of a dogfight defensive struggle, like we saw through the first quarter or two, and it'd just be kind of low scoring game that ended up kind of just down to 4 point. Somebody gets the last touchdown or the last field goal or whatnot. But it started to kind of open up on things where teams kind of adjust a little bit. And I'm not impressed with Daniel Jones. We talk about a future quarterback that will be on the market. Maybe we're looking for a quarterback in the market. Let's just say that that's another guy that I would view in the same realm of a Jimmy Garoppolo or a Baker Mayfield type to me, where I look at that guy and I go, that's not the answer for you at quarterback under any circumstance.
Yeah, I wanted him to be good, but he's not.
No, he had a couple throws in that game that were there for him to be had. If he could just make the throw up the sideline outside the hash marks, and he just could not do it with any kind of accuracy at all. Just couldn't.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree, but still, nevertheless, impressive game. You stopped the run against one of the best running teams in the league. I was sitting there thinking, this both these guys, Daniel Jones and Saquon, can suddenly bust it for like 60 yards, and it never happened.
No, and the Daniel Jones aspect where you didn't let him get anywhere close to getting free in this game, and he has been one of the, if there's a quarterback in this league using their legs as much as anybody, he's every bit as much as Lamar Jackson and the way that he uses his legs right now because of his limitations, partly with throwing it. And Saquon, to me, Brendan, I don't know to your eyes, but that looked like to me a top 3 running back in this year right now. Like maybe he won't be there for long, maybe the injuries pop up at some point, but he looked like a top 3 running back in his ability and what he could do. And them stopping him, it took all of their effort, but they got to be given credit for doing it. It wasn't him falling into tackles. It was them just playing so good football as far as defensively on that front.
Mumbles, thank you for the $5. On the topic of Fant or Parkinson, who do you prefer at this point? Do we give more snaps to Parkinson from Fant at this point? I don't want to go too far with it, is my thing. Like, I mean, Parkinson still isn't producing as much as Fant, as little as Fant occasionally produces, and some of that comes from the fact that Fant is your top tight end and Parkinson's your third tight end. The matchups are a little bit friendlier.
Yeah, Parkinson's more have turned himself into an inline tight end type like Disley. Noah Fant is your move tight end. He's your H-back tight end. And so you do need that H-back with the inline guys, especially when you run as much 3 tight end sets as we run. So I am hoping that Fant on that Mumbles can start to round into shape, and you are stuck with him into next year. So it doesn't make any sense to kind of over push Parkinson in a spot because the contract's guaranteed for that 5th-year option. It's much more, let's try to find what Fant does well. What are the routes we can work him in on? How can we make him more of a factor here in the passing attack, as opposed to right now where it's just been sort of like little crumbles here and there of usage, strangely enough.
Yeah, I feel like the big Fant game will come at some point. It's hard because we use 3 tight ends. But somebody in my chat the other night made the point that, when we play the Rams, their linebackers are so slow, that could be a game where Fant goes off.
Yeah. I mean, the 3 tight end set has been the unique part to this offense that I think goes beyond anybody else in the entire NFL and how we're using him and the way that we can make them such a weapon for us. We run our 3 tight end sets out. And normally when you do 3 tight ends, it means you're going to be a run heavy set. It's more likely than not all the time going to be run heavy 75% of the time. We're using it like we'll pass just as much out of the 3 tight end sets as we will run. And so it keeps those teams off balance. Like you said, with the Rams, you put teams into a bind where do you want to play base now? Do you want to go nickel? And if you go base, we'll hit you with the pass. You want to go nickel, we'll hit you with the run. You can really kind of counter people and put them into a bind with this formation. And what it's reliant upon to be able to do that is, of course, 3 legitimate tight ends out there, 3 guys that are a problem to some degree or another. I'm not talking game changers, but that they're legitimate guys that can run routes and can block. There's not some major gaping hole to their game. All 3 of these guys, relatively speaking, can do all 3 aspects of the tight end position. And that's what's allowed this, on top of Waldron being very creative with it, that's what's allowed it to be devastating. And Brendan, just in addition to this point with it, I think it's going to be a big part of where we can drive this year is how we can continue to utilize that 3 tight end set, because it is so unique to Seattle. And there's so much opened up within it in the way that you can attack that I think they're just starting to kind of scratch the surface and how to get the most out of that with this personnel that they have.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the NFL is just a big battle of like counters versus counters and stuff.
Mhm.
Where remember when the Wildcat was introduced to the NFL by the
Yeah.
Dolphins in 2008? Nobody knew how to deal with it for like 10 weeks,
Yeah.
and then they figured it out, and it hasn't been the same since. Like it's a never-ending battle of just going back and forth between, okay, this works really well right now, and then eventually defensive coordinators figure out how to stop it.
Yeah, 100%. I would say that's very applicable here. And what's nice is that you're always seeking as an offense to find those little edges. What's the new thing that somebody's not able to deal with? And for a while, it's been two tight end sets in times in the NFL, but I haven't heard anybody using three tight end sets like this and this fluidly across the board and how you can implement it. Three tight ends to one side, two tight ends in the backfield, one on the line of scrimmage. They'll move them all over the place in their alignment and how they set it up. And it just allows them to be so creative, especially too, like we saw with Disney this last week, right? One of the fun plays of this game, Brendan, was you got Disley coming back inside post snap. And when he comes inside like that, a defender's thinking 99.9% of the time, here comes a wham block. Here comes a wham block. You certainly aren't thinking, I better cover this guy when they need a yard here on this third down play. And Geno pitches that ball into him, gets the pitch, takes it for a couple yards up the field. But that's part of that now secondary creativity you can employ with this scheme when you're running it traditionally a certain way like they do. And it's Disley comes inside. I'm thinking wham block. This guy's about to hit me. I got to ratchet down. Not he's going to get the ball. But just another spot where Waldron's been, we've got to give him his props here, Brendan. He has been so awesome this year in not only executing his offense by its designs, by the McVay designs, but also finding his own creativity within this, his own little innovations.
Yeah, yeah, there was that play. I feel like I only ever see that play work when Andy Reid runs it.
Yeah.
There was the play where Lockett lined up as a running back out of the backfield on fourth down and caught a pass.
That was Cooper
Uh,
Cup stuff there. That was the
yeah,
that's the Cooper Cup routes. What they will do with them to get him free. And I love that they did it. It was taken because you got the Giants bringing the blitzes in those situations, and so they're not going to usually account for what would be the hot read running back coming out there. So create Lockett as your hot read running back and go that route with it. It was it was great. I love seeing that by them.
we had another direct snap to Walker with the Geno faking changing the
That
play.
was great.
Yeah, which would I mean it worked. It all worked, right?
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely. And it's built out of Geno using so much control at the line of scrimmage lately, and he's doing so much of that naturally. It doesn't look like why is he doing all this talk? You were thinking as he's doing it, oh, he's just getting everybody on the same page with the call. He's adjusting something. Defenses are also expecting that as well. It's part of why that works in that moment so well. It's because he has done so much pre-snap. You know, Walter gets that play call into him early and lets him get up there and really, especially with the up tempo stuff they run, where he gets a chance to really evaluate what's going on and change things around a bit.
And yeah, I think that basically sums it up. Life is good right now.
Life's
Five
real
and
good.
three. I thought we'd be 4-4 at this point, I think. So we're not far off, but the team is, their record's better than I thought they would be.
Mhm.
But more than that, the team is much more fun than I thought they were going to be. I thought that even if this team was good, it was going to be like a low scoring team that wins with defense, that grinds, that kind of just grinds the clock out on you and wins close games. No, this team is doing some things beyond that expectation, and it's been great.
Yeah, agreed. It's been fun, and they've been vastly better than I thought they were going to be. And having both of those two elements, Brendan, has been, as I said, this has made this one of the funner seasons to watch in recent memory. And it's just there's so much to talk about and so many exciting things kind of percolating here on this team that it's just wonderful. And to know that we're again not looking at dark ages, or we're not looking at 3-year rebuilds, or Carroll and Snyder aren't the right guys. So we got to get through this first. Then we got to get to the team selling. And then we'll eventually get to an owner who will be committed to winning. And then he's got to start building that winner up. So, 2026-ish. We don't have to say none of that because this team's ready right now. It's in good hands right now, both front office and coaching staff wise. And we are at the top of this division. As you said, life is good.
Yeah, yeah. And like we said at the top of the show, the other teams that are going to be competing for playoff spots in the NFC, by and large, did not get better at the trade deadline.
No.
The only one that did maybe was the Vikings. Everyone else just kind of, well, I think the Eagles trading for Robert Quinn was pretty nice, but other than that,
That and the Niners getting CMC helps because that's a little bit of a
a
deadline
little.
deal.
I-
That's
I'm
a
not.
little.
I'm not unhappy about that, honestly.
Oh, I'm glad they made the move too. But
Mhm.
it does if he's on the field, it does help at least a little bit there.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. So I want to thank Brandon for coming out for the show tonight. I want to thank everybody who came out tonight to watch. Had over 400 people at one point, still
Woo!
around 400 now.
Let's go.
And we're going to do this again on Brandon's channel in 2 days. We're going to talk about this upcoming Cardinals game.
Mhm.
So, going to be an interesting one. We're probably going to get Arizona's best shot. This is kind of their last chance to salvage this season.
Mhm.
And it's a chance for us to really stake a claim. We staked a claim by beating the Giants, but if we win this game, then people are going to have to take us seriously to maybe win this division, I think.
They'll have to stop saying San Francisco, San Francisco, San Francisco, and they have to start saying it's Seattle. To your point on that. Yeah, they will. And yeah, you're going to get your best. You're getting the best punch from the Cardinals this week, where they're standing in this division, where they're standing out with their season. They're going to give you everything they got. And this has been, especially a house of horrors for us with injuries. Hopefully we can stay at least just reasonably healthy coming out of that stadium.
Yeah. Some people are claiming that it is a double XP weekend. I don't know if it is.
Well, it just came out. The new Call of Duty just did come out. So,
Oh, yeah.
hopefully we can get him out there, tired out here doing his team phase stuff here during the week. That would be great.
Yeah. So, thanks everybody for coming out. We will see you again in a couple days. Brandon, thank you for being part of things tonight.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm. And before we get going, with things going so well, we of course have to do it.
Gotta let them know.
Of course we do it no matter what, right? We would do it
Well,
no matter what. But
but
it means a little more now because things are going so well. So gotta let them know. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.